Go on.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Instruction Support Services Committee. My name is Rob Traber. I'm the chair. It is 5:34 on August 23rd. Present. What did I say? August, excuse me, April 23rd. Wrong A. Present at the meeting, we have Albert Benahan Grajales, and I don't see Mr. Woodson present at the moment. Sam, you'll give me a heads up if you see him pop up before me.
Yes, sir.
Please. And we have a full agenda. And I'm going to add to the agenda, correct? We can start with, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes dated March 26, 2025. Moved by Mr. Grajales and seconded by me. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's approved. Let's add an item to the agenda. I have a listing for this, or do I want to make sure I guess it right?
Library refresh.
A presentation and discussion for possible referral to the full board for the library refresh grant on Sora Electronics Library Collection. And second on that motion, seconded by Mr. Benahan. We'll add that to the agenda as the first item for discussion so that you can go home now. That I hate. So
The slide.
having added this item to the agenda, Ms. Welsh, you're here for that too, right? Okay, so note that Ms. Fahey is here with us in person and Ms. Welsh is here with us to make a presentation on this item.
And Teresa's going to project this, share the slide. All right, so good evening. As you mentioned, my name is Lisa Badgett. I am a librarian here at Bridgeport Public Schools at Park City Magnet School, and I'm accompanied by Teresa Welch, also a librarian, working in AST. I always get that mixed up. We're both librarians, and we're here representing our library refresh grant. It is a federal grant. The monies have already been allocated, so we have the money. This source that we are looking to subscribe to is called Sora, and it is a digital library. And as part of the library refresh, we want to ensure that our students have access to reliable resources, that they have equitable access, and for us to, of course, promote reading and encouraging and championing for why reading is important. Research, as many of you may know, is time spending reading positively impacts our students' proficiency and as well as their achievement goals. We have a long-term impact on reading, and there's a high correlation to achievement, reading achievement and socioeconomic status, gender, the family structure, and even time spent on homework. So reading is super important. As we know, sometimes our students may have access to fewer books. There are certain areas where it's considered a library desert, where students or families don't have access to books. So this is one way for us as a school that advocates for libraries and literacy to ensure that our students have access to quality books and supporting their education as well.
And just to hop in on there as well, one of the things that Lizette and I have been working with in conjunction with the ITS department is working with Bridgeport Public Libraries to help remove some of those barriers as well. The librarians around the district do a fantastic job. A lot of them work with their local public library branch to get students library cards. And what we're moving towards is having a time where we will be able to use the student's ID as an actual library card. So what will be nice is for any of you that remember having to bring your kids to the library to sign them up for their library card, you usually have to bring different forms of documentation, paperwork, and things like that. Many of the libraries that Lizette, myself, and others have worked with have been really wonderful in terms of agreeing to, by nature, in virtue of the student being in Bridgeport Public Schools, they've met the residency requirements and they've streamlined that process for us, which has been wonderful. But now the next step is going to be using those student IDs as actual library cards. And that's something we're really excited to be moving forward with as well.
So the next, our next point is acknowledging or sharing out why digital reading is important. It's essential in preparing our students. The increased digital reading, there's increased digital reading in colleges and careers. Standardized tests are moving more towards digital. And so now is the time for our students to build and to keep and sustain their reading skills. Digital gives us the power to deliver thousands of titles to our students instantly. So what we're specifically looking at is Sora. Sora essentially is a digital collection of digital library. Our students would be able to access Sora through ClassLink. So it's part of our single sign-on. They'll log in with their student credentials at MyBPS, and the icon would be there for them to access this digital library collection. It'll be available on all of their devices. Our students have iPads as well as their laptops, so they have access. They'll be able to access it through both or all of the devices that we have using their
And personal devices as well.
Right, personal devices. So we can be on our cell phones. We'd be able to use and read devices on read a book on there as well. So why digital with Sora? One of the most important things is that it supports all of our learners. It helps supports our ELL learners, our struggling readers, students with disabilities, our emerging readers. Our access facilitates access to the resources for our students, as it's the books would be stored in the cloud. Our students have access 24/7. They can be at home logging on and reading a book, as well as being in school and having access to these ebooks as well. Again, supporting 21st century skills for our students, preparing them for higher education as they progress through the grades. And in regards for our benefit for us monetarily and saving in regards to stretching our budget and allowing for students to have access to multiple resources. We don't have to worry too much about damages or lost items or materials in regards to collection and borrowing the ebooks. Some of the Sora features that we want to ensure to highlight that students would be able to see, staff as well, like both our teachers and the librarians in our district will be able to see reading statistics. There are achievement badges that students would be able to earn as they're reading through. We have multiple formats available, as we mentioned, offline access. So a student might be online, they download the book is on their device. So if there's somewhere where there's no Wi-Fi, that book is there, right? We're at school, we download the book while we're at the library and we're home, and maybe we don't have Wi-Fi at home, we can still read our books because it's on our device, right? And the synced progress. So I might start my book at school and then I'm at home reading, I'm still gonna be able to find where I left off in my reading, essentially like bookmarks my ebook, right? And again, highlighting that it's a single sign-in because they have access through our ClassLink.
For any of you that are familiar with Overdrive, this is very similar to that, or Libby, or other things that public libraries use as well.
So part of the Overdrive collection and that students will have access to on the Sora platform is that they provide a no-cost collection that's often curated by their digital content librarians. So there's like the Sora Starter Collection. This is a collection that's always there. There are Spanish language titles. We have books with the SEL component. So this is a collection that will be provided to us, and there's no charge for this core kind of starting collection. Let's see. So it's a full service digital platform. We have independent reading. There are titles there that are curriculum titles. There are books for multi-language learners. There's several languages, books available in several languages. There are professional titles that are also included in the collection, and we also have titles that support special education. Typically, the regular lending period for a borrowed book is usually 3 weeks, and that's something that can be adjusted based on, let's say, if a class is working on a project, so they might need that book for a little bit longer than that 3-week borrowing time. That's something that the librarians can adjust the borrowing period so that they have that time for an extended, that book for an extended amount of time and renew. So how do we manage this collection? How do we keep the books coming into this collection? So within Sora's platform is called Marketplace. And here is where we choose the books that we want our students to have access to. We have, as part of our collection, the proposal that Sora has put together for us. Our students would have access to over 400 magazine titles, over 2,100 graphic novels, not comic books like magazine comic books, like graphic novels, right? And it can also be not only like fiction, but they're nonfiction written in that graphic novel format, which is tending to be something that students are like really popular, right? Because we're able to grasp that content and understand in a way because of the way that the graphic novels are set up. So they'll have access to that. We have cornerstone biographies that will be available to our students, as well as highlighting like sports. So there might be biographies on athletes or just different sports, how to play those sports, the rules of those sports, history of those sports, that kind of thing. We also have in there, they're called the phonics and decodables, which are like the rookie readers, early readers. So our students will have access to those as well. And then we have the custom book selection. And so that's where, as a team, librarians are like, okay, students are reading, Dork Diaries, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, all the Goosebumps and Wings of Fire, whatever it is, that in this space is where those books are collected and added to our platform for Sora. So that's within there. A feature that we have is viewing insights, where we'd be able to use this for collection development. Like we can see what are our students' interests, what are they borrowing, how long are they on, and then we can decide on how we're going to manage the collection, what additional purchases would be made based on student use and interest. So we have that data insight that's available to us as well.
And just to hop in, Lizette, do you want to talk a little bit about how myself, you, and some of the other librarians, we've previewed this, and from a navigation standpoint, it's very easy for the students, for them to search by interest, to search for what things that they want to read. So at our last presentation to the board, we talked about how important reading is. Lizette mentioned it again at the beginning. For those students to find the things that they want to read, to encourage that reading behavior and grow it, this is a really easy platform for them to navigate, and it has a really wide swath of things for them to discover.
So the next piece is our Overdrive support, which is Sora supports our team in regards to collection development. One of the features that is part of our quote for Sora is that it includes teacher and staff development, so that we have throughout every year for the 5-year duration of the subscription, we have professional development that's built in, so that we would have the beginning of the school year, and those few that are spread throughout the months, we'd be able to schedule professional development, not only for the librarians, but for all educators in our district on how they can use this, encourage students to use it, so on and so forth. And as the grown-ups themselves use and have access to e-content as well. So professional development is provided within this, and we have on Sora a team. And this here is the contact and the list of the people that are on board in regards to helping us in maintaining the collection, training, any content questions that we may have, any tech support that we may need. They're well-rounded in regards to the support that they'll be able to provide Bridgeport Public Schools. And this is Public Library Connect. This is something that Teresa had mentioned in the beginning in regards to Bridgeport Public Schools. Several of our librarians have connected with the public libraries throughout Bridgeport in maintaining a connection with the librarians. And there's an even next step level where our students would be able to borrow ebooks directly from our platform, connecting to the public library and borrow ebooks as well. That is down the line, but that's definitely something that is available and something that we're going to be working on, making sure that students have access, more access to good books. And then that's the final. Oh, I didn't say, wait, before I say that. So I had provided to the committee the total cost for this subscription for 5 years is $580,000. And as I mentioned, that includes magazines, graphic novels. We have a core content of over 750 titles, and then we have our custom book selection. The biggest piece is that year one, because we're actually setting up the digital library, and then it continues and supports and like managing and updating the collection throughout year 3 through 5.
Is that this is also from the grant that has to be geared specifically towards library and books, children's books and media for the students,
The
correct?
same
Right.
bit of money we've been drawing from
Yes.
the dedicated pool.
Yes.
And has that pool been touched, affected or anything by any of the craziness going on in this world?
No, sir. This is specifically, we've held true
That
to,
money's locked in, there's nobody coming in, nobody's gonna get
we have held true to, the grant in that this is for our public school libraries.
Well, that hasn't been the reason it's been taken away, so I just want to make sure that we're still good. We have, so I'm good. I have a more question about that, but you finished what you wanted to.
So that was the one piece was just that the cost is $580,000 for 5 years, including our professional development for our library staff and educators throughout our Bridgeport Public School District. And our last slide is our contact person. Krista has, I met with Krista, that's our Sora representative, and she's been great in regards to answering my questions. And can I have an extension on the demo? And I'm working on this. How do I change that? How do I help the students find? So we really do have a supportive group, and Krista has been awesome in helping getting this proposal together, and for me to present to you all this evening.
Let the record show that Mr. Medina has joined us at the meeting, and Sam was too small over there. Did I miss anyone that I need to? I should note the superintendent is with us, but I can't see.
Michelle McKinley.
Okay.
Well, I haven't really gone through the rest of you, so I'm not trying to ignore the administrators. I realized in my haste to start the meeting, I didn't really do a full, we didn't go around and introduce ourselves, but I figured everybody has business here and we get to it, but out of respect to the superintendent, I decided I should recognize him. And once I was informed he was here, I didn't realize he was here, and I don't see any other board members. So other than Dr. Saki, who is our designated contact, administrator to work with us, I figured we'll continue, no disrespect. We'll get to. I just introduced him. Started by saying Mr. Medina is here. That was the whole point of my interruption. So let me then finish my question on money, which is how much do we have left in this grant?
The total amount,
About.
I don't have that number. I can't honestly answer.
I can get that number.
Yeah, And it comes from where?
So this is specific to the library refresh grant, right? That's the way the grant was created, right? And
Okay, I understand it's dedicated to this, everything else. I'm not trying to pursue that. I'm not even trying to look to divert it to something else in the budget. I'm looking to see if it truly is secure.
It is.
That's my question.
It's a federal grant, and this was something that we had applied for extensions on, in fact. The spend down on this was supposed to be completed, Lizette, by September, I believe. And we've
Last
gotten
September or this
extensions on that.
September?
This past September.
September, I'm sorry.
This past September.
No, we're,
Mhm.
wait. The extension was already granted. We have to spend this money by September 2025.
So we have to spend the rest of it by this September, according to the extension we got from the federal government.
Yes, correct.
Okay, and we
Correct.
know in Connecticut already that extensions that were granted under the previous administration were taken back under the current administration. So that's why I'm asking these questions. That's all.
Right.
I'm not trying to shake anybody up. I'm not trying.
No.
I just wanted to
I
make sure
understand.
that we spend it before we lose it.
Well, we're.
And that we don't lose it. Really truly is what I want to make sure, because, money's been pulled back.
Yeah.
From the federal government that was previously approved. And, that's out there. That possibility remains.
Yeah.
As they dismantle the Department of Education. And money, so that's why I'm asking. So I'm trusting that we'll see you again this year.
Absolutely.
Good. Good.
well done.
Abby, let me, go to my fellow committee member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Budget, amazing presentation and I like it. But I have a question because I really downloaded the app, I did it. So when I'm trying to say, this is my question. These programs, we have, it's installed, we have it already. Guys, want to be sure because I'm trying to look in the schools and I don't see, already. I'm like, why Bridgeport School, they would show up, they say Bridgeport Public School, but another town, and the name of the school, we have another city. No, I know, but I want to be sure, I'm a person.
So we had a trial, which was specifically just so that, the library refresh team and, could go in and see it through the platform of a student. And then we got to see a little bit of the administrative part of it. But I was able to go in and say, I'm a high school student, and then this is what's available, and then I can switch it. So that admin part I have access to. However, when a student logs on with their credential, they're logging on based on like their profile. So if you're K3, this is what you have access to. High school, of course, has more, access to other content. So it's leveled content. It's not live because we don't have a subscription. What I was looking at and what we were able to use was a trial.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to be sure, that's what I'm trying. What's the number you have in your budget presentation? They say $19,037. No, I said dollars.
Students.
That's the students, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's,
be sure. I see numbers in
oh,
get nervous.
no. That's it.
All right, for now, I don't have no question, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Ms. Medina.
Well, I'll piggyback on this question. That is not the correct total enrollment
The time.
as of this day, right? Just want to make sure, because I know that number, somebody already mentioned 12, 19,
We're about
17 at
19.
one point, and now we're thinking about
We're high.
20. So, okay, I don't know when this was made, but I'm,
Wait, I'm assuming that number was what it was at the time of the submission.
Right, that was provided.
So when you said September, Ms. Valle, September 1, the end of September, do we know, it's like deadline?
Well, I was told September 2025.
We'll get that, we'll make sure it's not just the beginning or the end, and then what's the total? I think Mr. Fury would like to know in us, what's the total left on it, that we know.
Correct.
And we can always help each other out.
Yeah, I just want to know how much is left and the other question you already answered, which is we're going to spend it this year.
Yeah.
I mean, the sooner we spend it, the sooner we've locked it down. And since it's dedicated, we have to spend it on this. So go ahead, Mr. Medina.
So I see that there is a discount, and that's already been applied to the final number. So for example, on the all access kids, 750 plus titles, For the 5 years, it's 11,200, which will total 56,000. And it says there's a 20% discount. So when we look at this total, before I do all the math later, that 580 representing of the discount rate of that 20%. Okay. I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Freeburg.
Here's the question I wanted to ask, beyond the specifics. You have presented some amazing materials in front of us over the last few months. And, it's like I have two areas of question. One is that, how is this different than the other stuff? I mean, other than the New York Times, which I understand is different. Some of the other programs you've made have offered us all kinds of amazing choices and options with the kids too. And so I just was curious, how would you explain to me, and I was a teacher, what's the difference? Because I mean, these are amazing, and I heard you mention I could keep track of what kids were reading. If this was the only program they were using, that would have great impact for me, but it's not the only program they're going to be using, because I know we bought other programs that have also been impressive. So how is this different? Why? I know we've got the money and we're going to spend it, and this looks like a good program, and I trust your professional judgments. I'm not questioning that, but just you could give me a sort of layperson's explanation of what this adds to the portfolio we have of options stuff for our kids.
So it's not a program in regards to like a curriculum program or anything like that. So it's not that kind of a program.
And I don't mean it that way.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure.
No, I mean, you know, the choices we're offering our teachers and students for reading.
Yeah.
Whether it's hard copy books and materials or, digital. You've come in before and made other digital presentations
Yeah.
beyond the times.
Yeah. So this specifically for Sora, these are ebooks. So this is expanding our students' access to electronic books on various subjects, right? So essentially, the public library of public schools, right? If that makes sense. Our other digital resources that we have, for example, if you think of encyclopedia, the whole books that we would, right? So we have Pebble Go. Pebble Go is geared for pre-K kinder through 3rd grade, let's say. And think of encyclopedia that is like just right for that grade band. Then we have, and that supports research, and that's that grade band. Sora covers a bigger grade band because now we have from kinder all the way through 12th grade. And inclusive in there, we have the additional supports that someone who might be a beginner reader has access to that. We might have, there's level readers in regards to someone who might be in 12th grade, but reading at a 9th grade level will have access to books. They're just right books. So it's a matter of making sure like an expanse of our electronic resources, so that students have what they need to be successful, to be good readers and all that good stuff.
And if I could just add this, this is really providing an increased bandwidth or width of things for our students to look into. So in terms of reading interest, this is digital things for them to be reading that's going to only further enhance the literacy curriculum. And again, leaning into that digital literacy, this idea of how to navigate literacy in the world we live in. So things like a lot of the people sitting around the table are going to be talking about the SATs and PSATs and digital assessments we've done. This will only further improve the student skills in that regard, because it's going to help to teach them how to navigate those type of programs, books, assessments, things of that nature.
I understand all that. I just was somewhat, without going back and looking at my notes as to what we've approved previously, it just seemed to me we had offered some pretty amazing digital choices in the past, some of which I understood to be more textbooky, but some of which I understood to be fiction. And so the difference between that fiction and this fiction, that textbook and this nonfiction, you know, what's sort of, how is this different than what we've put out there? And you put out some pretty interesting stuff in the past. So I just, you know, it seems like, you know, I'm trying to understand the difference. Not that we don't need to get it done.
And then we can always come and do like a comparison of the next.
I think that would be worth it. Well, we'll vote it to the full board, but for the full board, it would be useful to sort of list the things we've already purchased along with this so that we can sort of understand the choices we've made with the grant overall and how, you know, this adds or complements or expands or does what you all are talking about. And I trust your judgment. I'm not questioning that. I'm just myself not quite following because it's just, I learned this some months ago over here. No, and so. Ms. Medina,
I'm not sure who it was. I was here at the end. Who created these numbers at the end? The one that, the end, which is actually, budget proposal for the Bridgeport Public Schools for 22-25, 19,337 students. In the quote. We know who created this?
Who created this, the SORA representative? I gave them based on what the grants department, we have a per line allocation. So we're allocating for ebooks, magazines, because this incorporates magazines as well. That's what I was given as their per line item, and
Okay.
that number, they worked based on that number.
These are storage numbers, right?
Store.
Yes.
Yeah. So I want you guys to go back respectfully, because when I do the math, for example, it gives me the number. This is why I want to know who created it. That will be gonna, says for year one, it's 11,200. Year two, XYZ, right? All the way to the 5 year. That totals, for example, the line item, all access kids to $56,000 for the 5 years. And it reads 5-year price locked and 20% discount when buying magazines and comics. So when I take 20% off that 56,000, I get 44,800. And I did the same thing with the next line and the next thing on the next line, which gives me a total of $564,040. But you guys have an estimate here that they gave you guys of 580. So I just want you to go back and make sure that they have their numbers right, because pointing to this is saying that we're gonna get 20% off.
I understood your initial answer, so make sure I understood correctly. That this number included the 20% discount,
Right, that's how.
not another 20% to take off, Billy.
Well, this is why when I read the line, it's giving me, that's why I asked who created this document. Because
No,
it's year
but
one
just-
price, where they can't assume, or respectfully, unless it was done that way, which again, it could have been, that is included, but this says and. So I want to make sure that we haven't made a decision whether we're going to include magazines or comics, and you get a percentage off if you do magazines and comics. So this is with it. So that's the case,
Well,
that's fine.
I guess the different question I would ask, based on what you've, is that my understanding is that 20% was built in. So that's here. If it's not, if the 20% is only applied to additional purchases of magazine and comics, then that's a different. And so we need that to be clarified. If is there a discount built into the price we have of 580,000 already built in that's suggested? Or is that just simply the SOAR price, period? That's it. And then if somebody purchases magazines and comics in those three categories, all access kids, 750 plus titles, Cornerstone biographies, 172 titles, and Cornerstone sports, 110 titles. I don't really see magazines and comics there, but
On the top two lines.
I understand that. That's why I'm asking. I don't see it there, so I don't see why it would be listed there. So it would seem to me that if you're buying, it would be in the top two items, is what I was getting to. So what is the 20% discount applied to? I guess, do we get an additional discount, or is that?
I don't get oversight for that, but they can check that. if
Yeah.
you wouldn't mind.
As I get clarification, so that when we do go to the forward, we can explain. These.
Yeah, because I read it one way, Mr. Medina read it a different way, and clearly we need to make sure that we're reading it the right way.
We can definitely get that information, and I've spoken with my colleagues in ITS, and Lizette, myself, and them can work together to get the numbers
Yeah.
to you and the comparison of all these products by Friday.
I do.
Thank you. Here, thank you. I'm clear, but I said doctor, and that's what.
To the extent, oh, doctor,
If you say doctor, then I'm
I'm not there.
I'm done.
So, but again, going back to my question on, you mentioned the reading statistics, the teachers can track what their student use is. Does that extend to some of the other programs we purchased, or is that like, this is only on the SOAR stuff?
So,
Do we have similar, we have a similar option available with the other things that we purchased? Other than hard copies, I know you can't.
in looking at like data like usage, you're
Yes.
saying, yeah, we have access to them.
Okay, and then, you mentioned 3 weeks borrowing time?
Yeah.
I guess I'm a little confused about what that is. These are ebooks.
Mhm.
Are there only 10 ebooks? And so if he takes 3 weeks and she takes, there's none left when he gets to Willie, even though he wanted to read that one too.
Right, so like that's one of the, with the ebook access, so we can have 20 people, borrowing and downloading the same book without, getting like a hold notice or not available notice. Because our district is so big, the custom book selection that we have is so that we can have multiple copies out without having to have that, wait, I want this book and I can't because somebody else has it.
But it won't extend beyond, I mean, is it unlimited?
Checkouts, you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, if there's a new Wimpy Kid book that everybody wants to check out in the next week, or right after the break, or for the break, because they're gonna read over the break, thank God. Are they all gonna be able to take it out, or is it only a limited number that can take it out?
It depends on, what we have available at that time, that, for example, of a new release.
Right, that's what I'm saying,
We have to go in and purchase or add that to our subscription to have access to those. So like the collection gets managed that way, just like we would have like at a bookstore that you get the books to borrow or that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
So there's a limit.
There is a limit, like, so example, I can't imagine there'll be like 1,000 copies of the same, but if I can get the numbers in regards to the
but
specific
you and I both know this week, because it's report card time. This week is the book fair at Blackham. I know, assume that's not the only place. And so every kid's going in there and drooling over what they want to get. And depending on what they have from their parents, and they have bonus options. In my class, they get a free coupon for something if they've been behaving and that certainly as a reward. They want to spend it. And if there's a brand new whatever series, I'm showing my age when I go to Wimpy Kid,
No, maybe it's still hot.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, it's been around a while, but I saw some new ones over the weekend that my granddaughter was giving us gifts, but there's just, if there's a hot new release, and, I don't have the money to buy it, but oh my gosh, maybe I can get it in Soros. I used to buy them for my class library, just so the kids could take them out, but I get one copy and then they'd have to like fight over who got it first. Does this give us?
And that's up, right, I'm taking notes to make sure that I can address that. The other piece of it too is because of the connection with the public library. Like if we don't have
And they do?
the public library, they'd be able to borrow from the public library. So that's where that collaboration, that connection,
I don't know, I love the public library.
yeah. Go for public.
We put that on record. We love the Bridgeport Public Library. We're all for it.
And that's the reason.
What's nice with the public library connection, apologies, sorry. What's nice about the public library connection that we're working to build as well is the idea of interlibrary loans. So residents from Bridgeport, for those of you who are residents not familiar with this concept, you can borrow from other towns as well. So if you're looking for that latest and greatest Wimpy Kid, Lizette and I can trade stories about, trying to have as many copies as humanly possible and sewing them back together because they were so popular. but you
Yeah.
can borrow from other towns as well. So what's really nice is if we have a kiddo who really wants that Wimpy Kid, and we have that connection through Bibliomation is the consortium in the state of Connecticut, and maybe Easton has a copy, Trumbull has a copy, Fairfield has a copy, they can actually ship that via C-car to Bridgeport Public for us to get for that student. And I facilitated that for students at Beardsley when I was there. I know other librarians that have done that as well. So it's really, that connection with the public library that our school librarians are working so hard to build is going to be a really important and valuable resource to have moving forward.
And just to be clear, I never developed my sewing skills, but duct tape works for me on most things.
It does.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
It's right, it's, I don't know, I believe you say something, but I want to clarify, if the student is out of town, they keep access, to the website, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to be sure.
As long as they're a Bridgeport Public School
Bridgeport, yeah.
student, they log on to their student portal, they have access to the resources list.
Mr. Medina?
Nope, thank you.
Okay, then, take a motion to approve and, refer to the full board for the refresh grant of Sora Digital Library.
So move.
Seconded by me, all in favor?
All right.
Aye, motion made, passed, and seconded and passed, so thank you very much. And subjectly, obviously, in the board packet for Monday's meeting, we would hope to see the clarification on the bill. And to the extent you can, the clarification on borrowing limitations.
And would you like the comparison to become back?
And then the comparison.
Or you want?
No, I just presented to the full board. I'm comfortable with that. I think this is a worthwhile thing. I'm trusting your professional judgments. And we'll let the full board decide on Monday, right?
Some of our other programs we just approved.
And then we want that comparative chart as to what we've already spent and bought. And so, we can ask intelligent questions about how's this the same or different than this one? Because right now I can't remember them all and I did not go back to research the minutes.
This presentation, we have in our package.
Yes,
Slides?
yes, these were in our back.
Thank you.
I asked to have it put in when we were, just to be clear, we were asked to put this to agenda and it wasn't clear that we were within the FOIA limits. So instead of adding it to the agenda and find out that we had violated the FOIA laws, we decided to add it to the agenda by a vote. Because this is a regularly scheduled meeting. So that's why we did it this way.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Raj.
you, Ms. Knighty. Thank you, Ms. Welsh.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. And now I can turn to the original agenda. We are on a discussion of Black or African American suspension rates and with more specific data as we discussed at the last meeting.
So thank you for the opportunity to have this discussion on suspension rates. All of the data that we'll be discussing here has been uploaded or copies. We usually look at or receive this data on a daily basis, but we review them weekly and we do a deeper dive quarterly. Data that was provided is school level data. Did not request individual teacher data. Should be addressed at the building level. If that would be, this would be an appropriate place to address that. But, this in collaboration with the building office staff, this is where, anything that this discussion, I think, and then we can follow up with the school team. But the data was shared, all demographics, and specifically to Black or African American students. So as you look at your packet, you see that it does have all of the demographics. And I'm going to have Dr. Fega give us some like a deeper dive into some of that data. Discussion.
Okay, we have a question of etiquette. Is it Dr. Fega or is it Dr. Fega Milo? Milo.
Either Dr. Big and
This is,
Dr.
this is Mr. Bennett. And so we've been correcting ourselves, and so he's pronouncing it the right way, and so we just want to be clear. If that, like,
So I,
I messed up Dr. Saki's name for a while, but I want to make sure that we're getting names right.
You can make his name, it's the soccer, he's the same.
I did.
Me, Dr. Alvin Saki, I didn't remember his name.
Oh, go ahead.
It is Dr. Vega, professionally, but I am my Maryland is Vega Milo, so I will take there. I've been called Dr. Vega, Dr.
Just want to make sure that we're being polite and
So
respectful.
we asking because, you know, it's
He-
serious.
he's the same place,
You work hard to have that title, so we.
You're not getting this argument, these two Puerto Ricans, he's having the argument with two Puerto Ricans. It's their culture.
Well, and I'm for Cheryl as well. But
There we go.
Thank you.
That was nice of you, thanks. So you do, keep me on my toes. Is there?
What's the name of the file?
It is called subcommittee,
Someone
like this.
sent it to me.
Madam Chair, Andy.
Yeah, absolutely. He's right as we speak. I apologize for that. One of the things I will say is all of our data is as of 4/17, most of it, because that was right before vacation and we put this together for you. So just that you'll see that I have marked it on top. At loose. So thank you. I appreciate the time today. I did want to give us some background information as well. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see that this is currently, as of 4/17, our ISS, OSS and expulsions by grade. When we look closer at the expulsions, they are mostly in ninth grade with 21 expulsions that have occurred in the ninth grade. With then 7 in 10th, 4 in 11th, and 3 in 12th grade. We had 1 in 8th and 3 in 7th. So that's why you only see really the orange band on the ninth grade because they have the most. After that, you see ninth grade also has 426 OSS and 277 ISFs. A little history, we looked at the state trends for racial disparity and wanted to share with you that we actually are a tier 1 school right now as of last year. We were a tier 4 in 2016 and 2017. And to kind of talk a little bit more about what that means, the tier 1 is a low suspension rate and disproportionality. A tier 4 was consistently high suspension rates and most likely high disproportionality. Overall, Black or African American or Hispanic Latino suspension rates were over 15% for 2 years or more. So we have made growth over the years to a tier 1 and hoping to keep in that tier 1 for this year as well.
So what is the standard for tier 1? Is the over 15% tier 4? you're
Yes,
Saying,
and
right?
it's less than 50% for tier 1 and less than that for 2 years. And this information can be found on Ed site. with the state. So next slide. This is the district suspension percentages by race and ethnicity from 2004. You will see that our Black and African American students from 2019, 2020, it was at 13.5%. And last year we ended at 11.8. There hasn't been a great dip, but it has been a dip, which is what has also led to us being in that tier 1 category. With our Hispanic and Latino of any race, you will see we were at 8% in 2019, 2020. And then last year we were at 6.4%. Granted, 2021 is low due to COVID, pandemic and us being out of school at that time. So there has been change and progression over time. And our objective is to continue that moving in the right direction over this year and into the future. Yes,
If you go back to the slide, we had mentioned with the tier 4, that is higher, that will be, the number will be higher than 15%, correct?
greater than 15%
Greater
in
than
2
15%.
recent years,
And then, I'm sorry?
in 2 recent years, so 2 years in a row.
Okay, that's what that means when you say, I see 3 red with the T4. Tier 4, which
Right.
is 16, 17, 17, 18, 19, 18 and 19. So that's, I see 3 years there. And I see 2 years is tier 2. What does tier 2 represent?
Tier 2 is consistently medium disproportionality, not in tier 4 or 3. Then either Black or African American or Hispanic Latino risk is at less than 2.
And then I see tier 1, 22, 23, like you said, and 23, 24, that we're tier 1, and it means it's lower than 15%.
Yes, low suspension rates and disproportionality is what
Again.
the state says.
Yep, but you're saying, I just want to make sure I clarify, because higher than 15% is tier 4, tier 1 is under 15%.
Let me read that. I want to make sure I have it correct. That is correct.
Okay, because I'm seeing on the next sheet that you opened up, the next one, the district suspension percentage and by race and ethnicity, I see in 21, 22, it is at 11.1. And that's under 15. But then I'm seeing 2021, 21, 22 as a tier 2.
Because you have to be out of that red for 2 years. You have to be out of the red tier for 2 years.
But we are out of that red 2 years, because you got 19 and 20, 21, 20 and 21, and that is 21 and 22. So red was 18 and 19. Go back on this sheet here.
Correct.
I'm just trying to follow you, because I'm
I
trying to learn.
understand.
I'm trying to learn.
So
So you said 2
Yeah.
years, and I'm seeing 1 year here, 1 year here.
I'm guessing the 2 years weren't counted because of
maybe
COVID.
because of COVID.
Yeah.
Um,
know that's true. I'm looking at, I hear your question. I'm just looking at the numbers and thinking that you're looking at the 19, 20, 20, 21 years. The numbers were diminished
and
because of COVID.
yeah, and they do also include a comparison to suspensions of white students, and that is included in that information. I can send you the methodology sheet as well that explains this. And that they divide the suspension rate by the number of white student suspensions as well. So I can send this methodology sheet to you. So
I
you
would've-
can see it.
Just respectfully, I would have loved to have seen, since on the sheet before and to the chair, 16 and 17, 17, 18, 18 and 19. We don't have it in here. So I would love to have seen that, because then we can compare what we're looking at, kind of like parallel, because I don't have it. So that's why, I'll have more questions because of that, because I'm not seeing the numbers. When I see it here, 19 to 20, 23 to 24 on the second sheet, we're always under 15. But it doesn't reflect over here, so I can't see 16, 17, 17, 18, 19, 18, and 19. I don't see the numbers.
But for the sake of this discussion tonight, I would agree with Mr. Medina. It would be interesting to see a few more years before COVID
Pull it from it.
to see what the history was before COVID, since we have two, maybe three statistically influenced years here.
So-
By COVID.
Yeah.
That we would want to see more, but tonight's discussion is to focus on what we have already identified this year as a disproportionate suspension rate among one classification of kids. And this state tiering, Mr. Medina, of 1, 2, 3, 4 is a different standard than what we're looking at to have our discussion. on. Our discussion on it is purely prompted by our review of our numbers. We're, comparing the percentage of suspensions of a particular group, especially Black males, with regard to the percentage of Black males in our district. We're not interested, the state looks and does comparisons and, of black to white, et cetera, and in our district, we don't have a lot of whites to compare to and experience, and yes, it's probably still disproportionate and should be looked at. I'm not suggesting that, but we're looking at it, what we see is clearly how to think. It's not, there's 5% white, and we have 5% of the whites getting suspended, and there's 10% African American, we have 10% getting suspended. We have a disproportion, and that's what we're trying to look at tonight, try and figure out why that exists. So while the historic numbers, I would be curious about too.
Yeah.
And to just, for Mr. Medina, I think just the, at least for me, for that slide number 3, it's just showing that we are heading in the right direction, right? Do we have more work to do? Of course, right? But we're heading in the right direction. I know we've been on the green for a couple of years, and I get you.
I agree 100%. But when you're giving me data, respectfully through the chair, when you're giving me data that I'm looking at, then I look at the same page, but you drop some of the data that we're comparing almost together, then I can't see everything because you're missing 60, those here. But I understand what we're trying to do here today, but I'm learning. So I want to learn that when I'm looking at it, I know that when I can teach somebody else, I got to be able to speak with data. This is not your.
And when you say we're getting better, I'm curious in what way you see that, this chart.
Looking from 2019, 2020,
No, I'm not. I'm looking from 22, 23 to 23, 24.
and
There's an uptick.
yes.
That's what I see.
And you can one.
It could be a 1-year uptick. I get that. We don't have enough statistical data. But, so I would hold judgment on patting ourselves on the back, I'm really not being critical of anybody here. I don't want to be stating something that's, not satisfactory because we want to look a little closer at.
And
So,
And you're correct, when we look at the next slide, and you did ask about the regular versus distinct when we were meeting the last time. So the regular is how many kids have been suspended, how many times. But the distinct is 1 suspension. So those students have been suspended 1 time. So that number is different than your top. Now, do we know how many days?
and you went to this chart.
On
The next page.
If I'm that one too,
The next page.
the regular. Oh, I see it. I see it's later
And
too.
it's broken
I ain't
down
seen it here.
Yeah, it's broken down.
By school, okay, I'm with you.
race and ethnicity
Wait, you
here.
lost me for a second, but I'm back. I didn't see that there's regular and distinct in these 2 things, yeah.
And then this is regular and distinct by ethnicity race. I'll pause here.
Yes, because there's a lot of numbers that I looked at these quickly and didn't. But what did you conclude by doing that? I guess I would ask you. So you're pausing for us to look at it, but why don't you explain what you learned by comparing it this way?
So we definitely see that there's a discrepancy between the number of IS. So I'm looking just right now under ISS, Black and African American, regular versus distinct. We see that 389 students have been suspended.
Right.
However, that number, when you look at the next line, is double. Oh, well, it's not almost double. It's
When you say next slide, what are you referring to? I'm gonna
yeah,
follow.
it says 389 distinct.
Yeah,
know,
I
the
see what you're
389 students have
you're
their.
looking at the 470 next?
And then if I go up above to the regular.
Oh, okay.
Got you.
ISS, it's almost fighting against.
So you see next stuff?
Latin African Americans in ISS was 706.
Which tells us that there are a lot of repeats.
That
Um,
is what I see.
and of those repeats, do we know? Do you understand what I'm getting, where I'm going?
So,
So like, we have one child that's been suspended twice, but we have one child that's been suspended 15 times. Do we know sort of how that breaks out? Do we have a way of looking at that?
so just the,
Or will we get to school? Am I asking that too? Or- Okay, then when we get to the school level, we'll get back to
what
that.
else, just to clarify, to make sure we're on the same page, in terms of regular and the 706, those are the total number of days, right?
Of times.
Of time, so you know,
So we
times.
don't know how many days. That's a
Okay.
different question and a different data point.
I was gonna ask that question.
So a student is suspended, it's sent to in school for half a day, it counts as an incident. So it's, yeah.
So that could be for 5 days, it could be for 1 day, it could be for half a day. When you're looking at the 706.
Or in the 389.
Yes. So
Oh,
this is just.
these are incidents
Yes.
or times, yeah, I got you.
Right. Like how many days is a different question and a different data point.
Chair. One second, I just got her. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Lee.
Just for clarification and from, again, I'm trying to learn from me, I'm not. She gives me, right, so in here you have a section that's called regular and distinct. Can you define what do you mean by that? Because I really have no clue what you're saying as far as regular and what distinct, what does that mean?
Distinct is individual student.
As an individual?
That means if I went around here, each person in the room had a suspension. Regular could mean that someone in that chair there has been suspended 4 times. Even though he's in that,
So,
or she's in that distinct count.
Got it. So these are
Yes.
individuals at the bottom, meaning, okay,
One person.
and then the other one is how many times?
It could be.
Got you. Thank you.
389 suspension, individuals were suspended under distinct.
Yep.
706 suspensions were given out.
So, yeah, because those
So-
individuals are suspended again.
William, for the sake of this, Willie Medina may have been suspended twice. Mr. Benahan may have been suspended 3 times. Mr. Traver may have been suspended 10 times. It doesn't distinguish there.
Exactly.
And that was the question I was asking about, was we don't know
And
if
what
there's a particularly, one of these multiple repeats in the regular is 5 students have repeated multiple times.
Exactly.
And the rest have been on once or twice,
Yep, it's like a good, kind of, those are individuals,
which we may get to
that's how
as she told continues, right?
And then the other piece that's not in these numbers is that the person in chair 1 could have gotten half a day. The person in chair 2 might have 3 days, and
It's
the
about-
person in chair 3 might have 10 days.
And then it's about it. This thing is just,
So,
it
yes,
happens.
it's just.
Every, I mean, that's good, because that's all we want to know, it didn't happen. And that the only reason it happened is because something caused it to happen, so that's good.
Well, at some point, we want to know if it's disproportionate too, in terms of the
Yeah.
severity of the discipline. We want to know if that's being meted out. If there's any, inequities. I'm sorry, Dr. Ferguson, go ahead.
It's okay. So what you also have been given then, and it is a lot of information. We have given you the sheets based on race, ethnicity, ELL, SPED, and gender. And it is broken out by school. That's going to be in a packet. With the packet you've received, should have received one that looks like this.
Packet with one vote.
This one?
That's kind of long.
Yeah.
So there's more payments for this.
It's another section, so they're not to the right, see it? Oh, there's more pages to this one?
There's only one page.
The only-
Only one page. There's-
And it's broken out by school, so that you can start to look at all the different schools. And the number of,
Oh, so this front page is basically what you already showed us, just smaller, so that,
if we put it up on the screen, you wouldn't be able to read.
right.
Yeah, and the right hand side it has that. Yeah.
You have additional information. It's based on what's on this,
So
that information is a lot of information. It is.
I understood you. I heard your question.
And what I see
Do you
actually
have any questions among the board members of the data we have in front of us? I'll finish for the rest of the week.
is interesting, what I see here, through the chair is, when you look at, distinct and then regular, it's almost doubling up, or the percentages in every race is almost kind of like, kind of the same thing happening. Like, for example, for white is 73, but it is 4.71. It went up to 129 and regular, which is at 8.32. It's almost doubling. It's almost like it's double, when you look at the percentage. See it?
Yeah, I do see it, but it's not true with Hispanic and Latino.
Oh, yeah, it's
not true with Asian.
421, it went up 3.2.
It goes from 3.24 to 5.27.
Yeah.
Double would be over 6.
Over 6, it will be close to,
And then, so it's fine.
but it's almost, I said almost, I say.
Yeah,
it's not-
no, it
we're saying.
I'm just looking at, I see still a higher pattern. That's my concern. Yes, something.
And it does continue. Obviously, expulsion is the one thing that's different because those are individual, and can't be repeated. But the OSS, you'll see, 470 under distinct, 791 in regular for Black or African students. But your expulsion is 10-10 because you're only expelled one time. It has to be. in a year. Yeah. Just so that there's an understanding of why that line looks the same across the board. But the OSS, you can see, with the Hispanic and Latino population, it went from 530 to 878. The white population went from 81 to 127. Our Asian population went from 8 to 15 when you look at regular, 2139. So that increase does happen. Into our
Thank you, Mr. Lopez.
This is everything. These are all.
Yeah, so I saw what she held up. This is the same information by school.
By school.
And then,
And these are going to be,
but it's not,
distinct.
I was about to ask
They're
you this,
distinct.
these are distinct. So these are just individuals.
The schools got, yeah.
Well, it's not a lot of time, so we don't know.
Correct. It's just how many individuals have had an incident of at least one time.
But if I took Slater's the first school. We're still missing a page. But I did, oh, no, we're in different,
There's something are in the back, so.
not in order, not in order, yeah.
It starts with, yes.
I know, and the packet starts with Clater, it's the other side, aerospace, Barnum.
Yeah.
But if I look at Barnum and Barnum. I can see.
Well, I think we should just like pull this apart and reorganize it.
I'm with you on that one, but.
I'm an ABC person, so you know, I didn't look at that. I just printed it.
No, I'm with you. Then you go to.
Yeah, I think you doubled it.
No,
No.
you know what, that was, I
Yeah, because you see that I got.
Not realizing, but I think it's only like one and one motion.
One is, you have both, you have suspensions and this,
I was gonna say, one is distinct and one is
Yeah.
Suspensions
suspensions by race,
and distinct, got it.
suspensions by race.
This inspection.
That's.
Thank you, Ms. Bella. You did a
Good job. Get it together.
That. Distinct suspensions by race. Yes. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Dr. Farah, when, this is including, special education too, right?
it does,
Great.
if
You
you
know.
look all the way to the end, you'll have a total in the middle, then if you have ELL, SPED, and then you also have it broken out by gender.
This one got cut off here, but if you
Yeah.
look at this first page, where's the
Suspension.
the cover here? Look at this cover. It came in this one.
Okay.
See, it's this thing. Was only. Yeah, during the, that's the total we ended up on the short, the expanded one, so we didn't see it.
Well, I figured
But
that
this,
as it's
there.
district, do we have a, no, that's not any before, do we have the numbers right now available as a district? African American, what is our percentage? Hispanic, what's our, as a whole district?
Enrollment or
Total as a district, yes.
That would be
on the first page.
yeah.
in red are the totals.
Original blown up page in red.
That's the number, but not the percent. I was, got you. I got the number. Perfect.
That is the total enrollment.
Yep, that's the total. None. Yeah. Now,
Then in the schools, you'll see the same thing, total enrolled is in red.
in the bottom. Got you. Thank you.
So back to Mr. Linehan's question, I mean, if you just kind of look across the top, they're probably almost getting towards the end. It's where you see the spread, and it should be on all the sheets.
Yeah, I showed you.
Okay, sorry.
So that has, we ended with total in the tiny print. After that comes the percentages. No, we ended with total percentages.
In
Right.
the presentation.
Right.
Talk about,
And then,
but this
and
has
then
everything.
this has everything, right?
Correct.
Which we looked at before. Any other questions, gentlemen? Dr. Fogg, you want to continue to lead us down your elucidation there?
So, yeah, so when you look at, and we did look at that, a school like our, magnet schools, you will see that the numbers there are different and lower in some cases. When you look at Bassett, you'll see that we have 36 students who have been in ISS for Black and African American at about 9.5%. Where our Hispanic and Latino population, though, there have been 56 students at 6.9%. Their OSS, though, is higher. So we'll see that our OSS students are higher than our ISS students. And I did see that in certain schools, and we can go through it closer, which means that we do sometimes have, and we talked about this last time too, about students being sent out of school more often than being kept in school for in-school suspension. And you can see that at some of the elementaries as well. We do have other schools where their overall totals are very low for their suspensions, and they are using their ISS room in a better capacity, keeping their kids in school for the day. What's going on in those rooms are things that we're working on as executive directors with each of our principals. We're doing professional learning. We have met with the state to talk and look at these numbers as well. And to say, how do we start to do some of the professional development on challenging behaviors? How we can de-escalate in the classroom? How do we use tier 1 interventions in order to support our students in the classroom so we're not getting to this place of ISS and OSS and of course expulsion. And so our executive directors have been working and speaking with the principals as well
Anything you want to add to it?
With some of these discrepancies between the ISS and OSS, sometimes it was a function because our ISS this year was manned or had worked
Yeah.
with long-term subs, Kelly services. So that was a district mandate that people use the Kelly service person to manage the ISS room. And for some schools, like Bassick, they were not having, they didn't have an ISS person available. So they resorted to, which accounts for some of the discrepancy
And it's
between OSS and ISS.
right, and when you look at a high school situation and a larger building, and then you go to look at the middle school, you'll see there's less. Such as, I'll just go right underneath to that Beardsley, which is only a K6 school, you see less use of ISS and OSS because the littler people, they're trying to teach emotional regulation there. Restorative practice in there. The Bassick has restorative practice to people working with those kids when they are in ISS. So it also is the school size and the grade levels as well.
Better for you to compare Bassick and Barn and Battalion. In terms of they're both large schools, they're both the same neighborhood. And they're right next to each other in many ways, and you can see significant difference.
And just to clarify, each building does have school suspension. Like that was a focus that we actually visited every campus in the district, actually look at the location and the space. And I think to one Marge's point that somebody was absent at the time, whether they were able to fill the position at that specific time when the child was being suspended, but as of the start of the school year, each building had space, had a new suspended space, and was given the staffing for that space.
And
But not necessarily our employees.
No.
Kelly services.
What percentage were 100% that Kelly?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, where does what was the position we just eliminated?
The behavior.
Yeah. How many schools had that? There were like 13, right?
there are 11 positions that we have, and then we do have a few more that are funded with, and our work with CC Catalyst, but the 11 that we have at this point.
Right, and so what schools were they in? They didn't work as in-school suspension, they worked as restorative practice. Many of them were former ISS.
Right.
In point, but
And next year, the state has mandated that we have to have somebody in-house to be in the ISS, to staff an ISS from them.
Always been the case, unfortunately. That's always been the case.
Which obviously due to our
That state law mandates that we have school suspension.
Right, what I said was that we have somebody that's on our payroll, Board of Ed, not a Kelly. So we're not gonna be using Kelly people next year.
That's what but that's always been the case, but they, through the meetings that we've had, it was said that the state noticed that we didn't have it, they called our attention, we told them we have those restorative practices, they were like, okay, as long as you have through Kelly, but then they said we're fixing that, that's what we.
So like
It was the
banded.
budget. The mandate, it's always been the case, but somebody felt, I have
Get to the requirements you could build it now at that point. And even now, we are actually in the process of changing the structure, which would probably be for next year.
yeah, I was about to say that what was always the case was that there was somebody who sat in that room. And there's not somebody that sits in that room 7, but for the full time. And we're not even gonna get there next year. So we're gonna have it, Willie School, in-school suspension days on Monday and Tuesday. At Albert School Wednesday, because it's smaller school, and in my school, we're gonna have it Thursday and Friday, because it's a bigger school, where it may be Monday and Thursday and Tuesday and Friday
Right.
for the bigger school. And
The location is still there, but in terms of the physical house, that's what.
that
we're
was
still
when we move on.
I don't know which schools you'd like to know. For the
Yes, I would be curious.
Okay.
So we have had 2 at Bassett. 1 at Bataya,
One at the time, yeah.
1 at Central, 1 at Columbus.
Yep.
1 at Curiel.
Yep.
1 at Fairchild Wheeler,
That page. So there's no more elementary now going, no. When I lose search, how we on the alphabet. Oh, the high schools.
It's
So we got between arrows.
Yep. So, and do Fairchild Wheeler. I got you. One there, you said?
Yes.
Yep.
2 at Harding. 1 at Johnson.
Two.
He's going to his list. That's.
No, I'm putting the number right there next to the screen.
Yeah, I don't know. I see it.
One, go ahead.
1 at Reed.
Yep.
And 1 at Teasdale.
T. And
Arrow,
Arrow.
Arrow IT, what?
bio.
Bio, front page.
This is on the ISS.
These are the.
These are.
These are the stories,
That's where they
right?
were at before.
Yes.
And they're not staying right now, so we know that's where they are.
Yes. Now, they weren't doing ISS, they would support the ISS, sure,
Yeah.
but they were the ISS. program.
Yeah, so there is 12.
Yes.
First, 12.
I will double check on Reed. That's the only one because there may have been someone who, and I'm not 100% sure, that like went to a different position.
Oh, that's right, that's right, but we had 12.
Yes.
But I thought.
We show it's 12 because I feel like it was 11 in the documents. We have.
I was that too, but this is what was given to me.
Whatever we showed, so.
I hear your question. I hear you. I said 11, 12, 13. It was in that area. Actually, I don't know what it was. So
Yes, to 12.
you're saying that it was 12 and one changed jobs. And when we did the layoff, there were 11.
Okay,
Then we've eliminated the position. There were 11 positions, 11 currently filled. Yeah.
That's what the record, I never proved.
And then the other point when I pointed to the high school, it was not to, pick on Bassett at all. If you look at Central and Harding, our 9th grade is really the place that we really need to focus, and that's what I keep coming to, and that's why I'm looking at that. Because if you go to the very first slide we talked about, that is where we're seeing high numbers. And so is that transition between 8th and 9th grade that we really need to all talk and focus about how we're going to strengthen that. One of the things we have done, and we're working with CT Rise, who's an organization that talks about what the on track look like for high school, educating our students and helping support them to make sure that our students are on track through 9th grade. Right now, one of the things that we see happening is kids setting goals. And then we had some student-led conferences this week where the students sat with their parent and the teacher to talk about their goals in the class, and how they're going to pass and do well between now and the end of the year, how attendance is part of that as well, and how behavior is part of that. And so we'll continue that work hopefully into next year. With them, they actually also had pizza for bees, I think, with trying to get the 9th graders to understand and to celebrate being bees better. And they're also doing studying and snacks for kids who have fallen behind to make up their work and to get some tutoring so that we can it's on track for 10th grade. Because we know by research that if they're on track for 10th grade, they should remain on track through graduation.
I like that. Going back to just looking at Bassett, just because you think this there, not for any other reason. But looking at that number, we had 58 distinct out of school and 122 suspensions. I know these are actual suspensions, as we said, not number of days. But do we know, so that means that the 58 state means 58 students received out of school suspension. Right?
That's it.
At Bassett.
I see 122.
You in the suspensions by right?
I see 122.
I see 58.
So you're in distinct or,
I'm looking at black African American.
yeah, you're in
Out of
distinct.
school. Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm on distinct.
Right.
That means 58 individuals.
Yeah, that's right.
58 individuals have-
That's what I said. I said 3 times, individuals.
Yes.
Individuals were suspended, and then some of those individuals were suspended more than once, which gets us to 122.
Correct.
Do we know how many of those individuals were suspended more than once?
So we don't, and I can work with data management. That was a conversation I was having with data management about how she figured that out. They explained that as well, because that could be, as it was said,
Okay, so guys, I apologize, but I want you to understand what I'm getting at here, the point I'm trying to get at, and that she's apparently looking at with data management, which is of those 58 individuals who got suspended. You know, if there were only 2 others that got suspended 30 times, well, that's relevant. Right? If 5 of them got suspended multiple times and the rest were just once, that's, you know, so that's what we're trying to figure
so
out.
57 of them, that I'm gonna go extreme, right?
Right.
Just for the comparison.
57,
But
and
if
suspended
you-
once, learned their lesson,
Correct, and had.
reformed themselves and got on
One
the
other
train.
student was after 57, 56 to 122, who was rolled out.
Yeah, which is a bit extreme, but yes.
And I said it was the street judge.
Yes.
Yes.
No, but that's the point I'm making. So if we say that there's a handful, and in my experience, that's not off the wall. There could be a handful of students that are getting multiple suspensions and the rest are, you know, 1, maybe 2. And,
As we
and
go,
the system works. So question is, what are we not doing? What do we need to do, I guess I should say, for those that are getting multiple suspensions to avoid getting to the 8 individuals that were expected?
correct. And then if we, just to look at another building, let's say, if we looked at Barnum above that, we looked at special ed, right? We said, okay, there's 7 students under suspension, but we go to distinct, there's 7 there as well. So they're for ISS, but 13 for OSS. And
Well,
30,
I'm only looking at the black or African American because that's the topic.
right.
And so I'm looking at Battaglia right below because it's equally large.
Mhm.
And it had one of the restorative practice positions. And I see that they had, you know, 31 out of school suspensions, 19 individuals. So my suspicion is that there's a handful or less who are suspended multiple times versus,
Mhm.
and that's something that we do need to zero in on. So
I think
perhaps
that
at the next meeting, we can take a look at, you know, sort of what that tells us about. Because that's really what we want to do is deal with those kids that are repeat offenders.
And it does come around to wraparound services, you know, working with those students, making sure there's support in the building as well as outside of the building. So that we can help them stay in the building and get more educations and help with whatever the root cause of the thing, what we have to do.
Right, which gets back to, because I want to be clear as I make this point, that I'm not looking to put all the blame on the student. We are looking to see if the system is failing the student, i.e. we're not dealing with whether it's an administrator or a teacher or some other staff person who needs to do something else with that student to help them avoid that individual avoid repeat incidents
Coming back to.
that warrant out of school suspension. Right.
Yeah, and I do think that is some of the work that the executive director is doing. It's to dive in deeper into some of this data. And then when they do see, so, you know, for us, and that's why, you know, when I started at evidence, to be clear that, you know, we did not request individual like teacher data because I think that can go on again,
No.
right?
I don't want, I don't want.
Yeah, no, there anything, right? But as we look at school data, to your point, we break it down a little bit more within a building, principal, and then they can dive to that level and figure out what's going on.
And should.
And we should be.
We should, and no disrespect, but whoever is overseeing that group of schools is working with the administrator of the building, administrators in the building, to look at, because, as I said before, in my experience, especially with newer teachers, that's one of the greatest challenges we have is classroom management. And we want to work with teachers to provide them the skills they need to be able to manage. We're looking at a school that we know we have particular difficulties, so I'm not trying to, single it out, but we do want to sort of use that as an example of what we're trying to address, which is, do we need to provide support to the teachers? Do we need to provide support to the administrators who are failing to provide the support to the teacher? What do we need to do to make sure the system works for the child? Which is our ultimate goal.
And my heart was out because, my niece was one of those students. She was very, very getting in trouble all the time, suspended all the time. She, for example, she got her book, that's her file, all her reports. When she got to another school, got her trained to another school, the principal said, and the staff said, okay, that's you before. Let's get rid of that. This is you now. You're starting clean, straight, safe. Let's keep it that way. And she was motivated. And I don't know what was going on in school. I don't know if it was the staff. I don't know if it was the students, why she was always getting in trouble or fired up. But her attitude completely changed. And she did very good the following year. Now she's at, one of Hibbets, she went to school. But it was something that we were trying to figure out. What's going on? Why is she getting in trouble now? Why is she getting suspended? We were trying to figure out as a family. And now that I'm part of the board, I want to look at that because again, I have teachers and principals that are, they know how to poke the bear and all that stuff. I've been a student like that. My brother was always a student at Roosevelt School, and I had teachers grab him by the and lift him up. That's what those days, not 30, 40 years ago. Beautiful teachers that motivated to know, hey, we got to get this straight, and I'm going to be here for you. And then you have others that are just, they're being blacklisted or whatever. They're already being put on a pedestal. Say nope. Anything you do is going to be like goodbye. Goodbye. So that turns into a discipline. Discipline turns into multiple, but turn into a suspension. And it might be out of school because maybe we don't have the right people in place. I don't know, but it was an issue. It got fixed. So we want to make sure that every campus has the right people to make sure that we can have a support for that student. We can turn this around. You can make a pivot. And it shouldn't have to be a move from one campus to another. Should try to do it in that campus. And for us, it was the campus that made the world of difference.
Well, yes. Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm agree with what Ms. Medina said. Sometimes it's different what's going on with the student, especially at home, because the education specialist isn't start home. But if that student, they don't have the support home, he will get it, maybe something in the school, and you don't know how that staff is acting because, like I said, we're human. We're not perfect. Sometimes staff has some issues, so we got personal problems, and they can be sick or something like that. Sometimes attack a student with not professional way, and the student say, "Okay, I'm coming from home with stress," and he, that situation happens. So that's one of the reasons we have to figure out on that what is the problem in a situation like that. Because I can tell you about the experience when my son before when he was in New Haven, West Haven, he came to the school here from Bishop Public School, and he's here present with the planet. He changed so much. Why? Because support, care, I'm here, you're not alone, stuff like that. Not because I'm the guy always be in Bishop Public School. It's the way the staff, Mr. Banner was the principal in Caribbean School. He cared and he said, wow, what a change. Stuff like that. We had to figure it out exactly where the problems come. If the teacher has some issue, problem, personal, because like I said, we're not human. How the teacher or staff said, listen, I have this issue, I cannot handle with this, what I can do, communication. If we don't have communication, how are we gonna, work, to be very successful and help each other, Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Dr. Avery?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the three board members, Mr. Traver, Mr. Medina, and Mr. Brennan. I think you guys make a very, very valid point here. And I think it's time. No one wants to hear the word accountability, but the accountability is at the individual campus level. And it's time for everybody to start talking about the accountability of everything that happens in a building, be it teacher discipline, student discipline, accountability, everything. We have to start bringing principals to these meetings here to justify the individual data sources that these executive directors and directors are presenting to this board, because they don't have the answers. Those individual principals have the answers, and they have to start owning their data. And so I think that's important. So I appreciate what you three have brought to light. I've been sitting here listening, and I'm like, no, I gotta validate that. And for the executive directors and Mr. Saki and Dr. Faya, it is time for you guys to push back about what the data is telling you and what those principals need to own, because they're not doing that. Everybody is tiptoeing around the conversation about how we need to support kids and teachers in that school environment. And so I would like to I'm going to challenge you guys to keep pushing and making sure that have them come in. If you have a campus or two that's at the height of your data sources that you're presenting to the board, you bring those individuals in to have that conversation with the board so they can ask those questions. What are they doing? So again, I appreciate you three. I've been sitting listening, and I like the conversation, and we got to do a little bit more of that. It's time to do that right now. So I appreciate you three for doing that.
They need to challenge me that favor. You know who I am, how I am.
I have something to add to that, Dr. Everybody.
I just want to add on to what Dr. Avery is saying. One of the lifts we've had this year is that in our district, prior administrators, prior central office people, there was a one swing, one issue, 10 days out of school suspension. That was the go-to. And everybody was 10-day out of school, 10-day out of school. What we've been working with our principals this year that we have been active about is calling them and talking to them saying, listen, let's take a look at this. Do we need to have a child out of school for 10 days of out of school suspension? What is that child missing? Do they need 10 days to learn, to borrow your word, to learn a lesson? And can we not do other kinds of wraparound services? Can we bring them back early, give them counseling, provide restorative practice work with them, or
Having spent 20 years as a labor negotiator on the idea of just cause and progressive discipline, it is the same concept. I do want to say, as having been a teacher for 20 years too, here at Bridgeport, and seen it, I had administrators who would always ask me, what do you want? And, I never asked somebody for 10 days. I never went there. It was, in school, out of school. If it got to that 1 day, 2 days, 3 days out of school, I can't ever remember asking for 2 weeks out of school. And, I'm sure it might have happened once or twice, but for the most part, I had administrators who worked with me and trusted, so what are you looking for? What do you want? So there was a give and take in my experience in that discussion, which should exist in all schools. Now I was an experienced teacher. There are new teachers that aren't going to know. And there you have to have an experienced administrator who is, overseeing this. And when something jumps out, if you've got a report that says school X has had, 15 10-day suspensions, then that's a red flag for you. Right, to go see, why am I having 15, is it the teacher? Is it the 2 or 3 new teachers that are overreacting, or is it an administrator that's not using the tools, the resources available? Now, in all of this, I say that the fight that we're currently engaged in to get more resources from the state is going to be critical in our ability to properly deal with these problems to be able to, restore the restorative practice positions, to be able to add counselors and other mental health workers for interventions, to add academic tutors because some of these problems are because the child isn't doing well in school and they're acting out. Mr. Benahan referred to the children that are having problems outside of school. That's where the mental health support is going to be critical. So all that stuff, so that we can intervene properly, is critical to our being able to do all this right. And it's one of the reflections of an understaffed, under-resourced school district that we go the easy route too much, and we got to call it. And that we should be doing now, is calling it when we see the pattern that somebody's using the easy route too quickly. But overall, to be able to do the better, fuller, more complete, wholesome, because discipline is, this is not Mr. Kirby, Mr. Kirby, the labor negotiator. Discipline is meant to be to teach you, how to behave better. And the object of discipline is not to punish you. It is to show you the way to a better life. And that is the point, to make you a better student in this case, to help you become a better student, and to make sure that the administrators of the discipline, be they teachers or administrators per se, are doing it correctly. And that's what I would think, Dr. Avery, between now and the end of the year, I would like to take a look at what we just talked about, because we really have one meeting, maybe two left in the year. And so I would like to take a look at that, how many of these repeat? How many individuals are repeating in these categories? And I don't think it applies, because I look at a school like Beardsley, and I'm seeing Beardsley and I'm going, we really don't need to worry about Beardsley. They got 0 in school, 2 out of school, and no expulsions. I'm not really worried about Beardsley. It's the schools where we identify a high activity of suspension and in school, out of school suspensions that we want to look at and analyze more closely. I would expect that to be the high schools all. And then the pre-K to 8 schools where we have higher numbers that need to be looked at. Yes. And I'm just curious, was there a criteria applied to putting the restorative practice positions in below high schools?
Yes, that was true.
We came to meet that, and there's some of it probably started off through grant.
Or sometimes they've also switched their allocation numbers, so it could be an interventionist, and interventionist turned into a restorative, because as long as the numbers were, because, Marlene had,
That's made by who?
it was previous administrator, so it was the previous CFO. So,
She said Marlene right away, so
I understand, but I wanted there was they in there. So I want to make sure who the they was, because I'm looking, I mean, just to give you an example, I see Blackham and Battaglia as equivalent schools. They go above and beyond, who's the second and third largest school in the city. They're the same pre-K to 8 range, so. And so I'm not, and then there are others that I could look at pre-K to 8 as I go through this list and say, well, isn't that interesting? They didn't get one, they did.
Mr. Traber, I could probably bring some context to that. It's my understanding when Superintendent Testani was here, he made that decision to move from the in-school suspension piece into restorative practices opportunities. I'm not 100% clear as to how the campus was designated to apply these restorative practices individuals to the buildings. And so as we started looking at budgetary opportunities to figure it out, and needing some additional dollars to take care of the state mandated in-school suspension piece, I felt the need that we need to have a more equitable, opportunity to provide restorative practices, solutions to campuses, all campuses. And so one of the things that I've really pushed the executive directors and Dr. Saki's office is to, when we start school up next year, restorative practices, training is going to be provided to every single staff and administrator in this district in order to have an equitable way of being able to handle and utilize their skill set opportunities and the training that they get district-wide, and we should see a huge impact in that. So again, just listen to you with your request. That is the extent of what I received when I started inquiring about that as well. And I don't really know the rationale. Anyone around this table, we're not in that conversation. And so
I would point out, Dr. Avery, that the question is moot at this point. But it will be relevant if, in fact, we are fortunate enough to be able to restore some of those positions. And as we look at going forward, if we're able to provide additional interventionists, and it was interesting that you then talked about that, because it's always been my simplification that we want more academic intervention and more social intervention to deal with the problems. And so the ability to provide the needed resources at the needed schools so as to minimize these kinds of problems is what so to the extent that we look at that and think about that this spring in anticipation of the fall, and we see where we end up on the budget, and what we have, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. You make a great point, and I think that's really where the data that you guys are requesting, and we keep it at the forefront of every single meeting that you guys have, that's going to give us the data that we need. So as we started bringing these positions back, we'll have to hit the highest need, campuses they're at the top of the list with that support, and then we work our way down. And so, that is going to be important, because I feel very confident that we're going to be able to bring some of these things back, but let's bring them back systemically to where it's going to give us the biggest impact for the investment that we're going to reinvest in moving forward. So, yes, sir.
Great. You want to go to this last sheet? I know we've.
The last sheet just is the most up-to-date, distinct, and regular numbers for OSS, ISS. So we haven't really been looking at those numbers. That's just broken down by school without the ethnicity breakdown.
Really?
That's 2017.
This one. Yeah, got you. Oh, you got, okay. Yep. So, and I think by looking at this, what we're missing here, that immediately jumps at me is the student population. So Beardsley's got 2,233,00. What's the student population? That's relevant. And so I look at them when I look at Pattaya and Blackham. I know I'm looking at two comparable schools with regard to the overall numbers, and so I can, and that would be useful if you could add that to this. But otherwise, I think that aims us at looking at the schools where we think that it's, needs to be more closely examined for next meeting. I don't think we need to figure that out tonight. I think if you pick some percentage cutoff that you want to use for where there seems to be a school that's got a disproportionate number, that we want to look more closely at why that, how many of those were repeat offenders versus not, it would be useful for us to look more closely at, because it'll guide us further in this discussion, I think. And I think, going back, Dr. Avery, to your point, our goal, I think, this spring is to focus on the issue and the questions we need to be looking at, in the hopes of being ready in the fall, one way or the other, regardless of where we end up budgetarily, to deal with this problem, because we have identified a problem that is real. And that whether we have lots of resources or less resources, we still have to deal with the problem.
Absolutely, sir. I think that you make a valid point.
Any other questions, gentlemen?
Nope. Very clear. Good.
So you all talk about what I've said. If you have questions, let me know and I can clarify. And I'd like to revisit this at the next meeting, looking more closely at perhaps a smaller number of samples that make sense. And I'm not trying, I don't want to try to single out. That's what I'm not trying to do, which is why you said we didn't bring in teacher. I don't want to do that. I know, but I do want to look at the schools and, what it tells us about the numbers. And I don't know whether that's just zeroing in on these categories and where the repeat, number of suspensions, how many of the individuals was that? How many individuals had one suspension? How many individuals had, even just take a look at that question in school, out of school. I think that would show distinct in and of itself, right? So if we looked at 5 to 10 schools that had large numbers and how many suspended kids had 1, how many had 2, how many had 3, how many had more than that, and that would just tell us something like that, right?
Work with data
Am I
management.
correct?
Should be able to.
Let the record show that Mr. Woodson has joined us. Good evening, Mr. Woodson. Did you have any questions on this, sir? I don't know when you came in. We were just wrapping up this part.
Oh, good evening. No questions so far.
Okay. Next meeting, sir. Look at the information. We'll continue to be continued at the next meeting.
And this topic is big enough of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we noticed a problem with the Black or African American student males, particularly, that we wanted to zero in on. It tells us something if we look at this data in other groups too, where there are high numbers. The same information is relevant. But we're looking at that particular problem because we thought those numbers stood out in the previous report. We were looking at SPED then. We were presumably working on how to better deal with the SPED. So hopefully we're addressing this issue in that, but we're also want to look at it in the non-SPED population. Correct?
Jeff. I really appreciate your hard work, for the team. And
Thank you very much. Dr. Hilda. Now we know the name. I got the name right. And so we will also get that earlier data just to get a more historic look.
Yes, I have it. Put it into. a
yeah.
graph for you. And I'm going to also add the methodology for the identifying discriminators, one pager for you from the state.
Great. Oh, yes, that would be great.
Sorry, but just for my own clarity, that's for our follow-up meeting here.
Yes. Yes. This is a continuing discussion on committee, in this committee.
Perfect.
There was no agenda item to be referred. It's this item that we're discussing here. At some point, if we decide there's action, that'd be a different discussion. Right?
Yep. Sure.
Okay. And so our next is PAC BPSO.
They have it? Yeah. Application, I just want to make sure we have the right paper and one just like that.
Yeah.
Mr. McLean, the top one on your left hand.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So maybe I will start and then I'll have Dr. Baker jump in. I would, like to, thank Mr. Linehan and Mr. Russell, I think, stepped out.
he's one.
And this committee, we had a very good conversation. Yesterday, I did the mixed up already.
Yeah, it's been a long time ago.
So we had a very
Slow return from vacation, a few days off, and you just aren't.
Right. Yesterday, that at least, from myself and Dr. Vega definitely gave us some context, regarding, how things have been done previously. To the PAC-BPSO convention specifically. And I think, that was very helpful and very telling, for us. I know that there were some adjustments made, which are all that, Cheryl, get into. But, part of, the discussion was also how waiting a lot more in terms of getting input from, Ms. Benahan when it comes to the actual planning process for this, because he does have a breadth of experience doing it. And like I said, some of the information that was shared was not on my radar, so again, thank you for that information. That was extremely helpful. And then based on that, we also came up with a sort of like a plan B. So Dr. Figuring, let you share that.
So, thank you again for the conversations yesterday. They were very, helpful in understanding, more about the whole process. Before we talk about that, I know in the last meeting, there was that request for an updated allocations, for the Title I from all of the schools. When we saw you the last time, we talked about spending and having it spent by, I believe, today. And so you'll see here that parent involvement allocations for 24 2025. It's here. At this point, the totals are, we have had over 88.2% for the elementary schools spent, and the high schools are at 87. We did have two schools that were at 0%. We have followed up with those two schools. So if you see 821, Classical Studies Academy had a 0%. We did speak with them today. All of their invoices are in, and that money is.
I know Queenie got on first time.
Mhm. 2,000.
So that is in.
Offering lessons at the beginning of the year. I know she didn't mess up on that.
That is all in and being processed. And then if you look at 816 Bridgeport Military Academy, we also spoke with them today. 4 invoices went in today, and we have 3 or 4 more going in tomorrow, and their money is also being spent. So when you see that the 108, the 111, those who went over 100%, the business office is speaking directly with those schools and with the principals and the PAC presidents to say you can only spend 100%. So you have to make sure that your number is exact. And so they'll be adjusting their invoices and things like that to make sure it says 100%, not 108 or 111%. So at this point, do you have any questions about the parent involvement allocations? We all definitely called. I know the ED spoke with their principals. I know Ms. Herron has spoken with several of the PAC presidents, following up and making sure that things are, one, properly filled out in the P10s, and that they're also appropriate items for PAC, and that they'll be used for things in the future, or that they are being used currently. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that I see that 108%, 111,
Yeah.
111%, and they go over. This is one of the reasons that they need to have the P10 form. You have there your proof. Because when the P10, and I want to send you the form, we're going to sit down and talk about how they can, because we're going to use in the training. It will be much better because when it's P10, they can go, the principal or the PAC president or PTS president, how much money got left. And then you don't go over. Because I know they send the invoice, and then the grant office and you guys have to figure out how to get paid and then go back and forth. This is the reason the P10 is for this. So
And then they print them out. And
the
you have
print,
people-
and you have the total, and you have, it's in the record, and before you do a purchase, I said, let me see how much money I got left.
Correct.
And then you don't have this issue.
Mhm.
So what's gonna happen when it's 108, 111%, over 100? Are they gonna, void, or they're gonna?
The business office is calling the principal to have that conversation, and so they'll either cover that extra $200, or they'll figure out how to adjust.
The school gonna.
The school would have to, or they'll have to adjust whatever they place the
I
order.
don't know if they still doing this. I don't know if they still doing this, but when some school, they don't spend the whole money. You can use that from the other school. Let's give example, Blackham School go over 120%. And Bassy, let's give it 80. You can say whatever Bassy got left and cover. Maybe you can find out. Like,
I can talk to
you
the
find
business
out.
office. It's
So
not
that
an
would be good.
100%
Yeah,
right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
Yes, there
Yeah.
are some possibilities of
that.
And so, because I know we do it before, we can do that, you know, so if they, the school, they don't use copy, exactly, we don't want the budget from the school we cover because, you know, budget's tight, so maybe the school, they need that money for something else, for the teacher, so you can use that.
And so next year I'll also help, we'll be looking at the P10s as well. Right now, we don't have access to
Mhm.
them, but they'll be coming to our emails.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to follow up and see things. So as you talked about in the past, if something like a computer comes through, we can have a conversation about
Yeah.
that's, you know.
And
what
it's
is the
gonna be,
purpose.
and it's gonna be for the secretary from the school, because she can go for the P10 and say, hold on, guys, you go over, you can, you know, before she
Right.
send that form stack to that tab, it's more easy for them.
Absolutely.
And I'm still working on getting the answer to our question, so that's not clear. Yeah.
But that,
Already got it. I'm just.
talking about, I agree with
I'm just waiting for that, I know, I understand.
Mr. Woodson, do you have any question on the parent allocation?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Medina? Okay, so Mr. Benahan asked the question I wanted to ask about, you can, if Blackham, which is under, actually, you could use Blackham's money to balance out somebody else who's been slightly over.
Correct.
Okay,
And I will,
now, let me just stay with Blackham for a second, because I want to make sure I understand. They had a $10,000 beginning budget. Year-to-date expended was 2,147. Encumbered 3,319. That to me adds up to 5,400 and change.
What school you at, Ross?
Blackman.
Followed, you got you.
5,
10,000.
So I'm just,
I can't do that. I apologize.
that she hasn't taken,
Right?
we're neat.
It's-
Gotta have her.
Holy cow, yeah, that's way off.
Actually, I'm sure Tito has the
Change
answer.
time over again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's way off.
6,000 and, he started to spend because there's,
No 60.
pending and form stack is.
That's it.
well, I didn't even get there yet. I'm looking at year-to-date expended. I assume that means you've cleared that and it's been approved.
Yes.
Encumbered means they put it in, but it hasn't been improved. But that's already 5,400 and change, $5,460, $70.
You're right.
And then I have pending and form stack. I wanted to ask, is that different than encumbered?
What is that? What is
So-
pending in form stack?
Yeah, that's why this room.
Let me finish my question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you could just ask that.
No, I was getting different.
You did.
So can you, no, I said
I-
that different. Can you then explain to me
Sure.
what pending and form stack is?
Absolutely. So that's the P10 that Mr. Redhand is talking about. So that's why this report takes a little bit longer to actually pull together because you have to go to 3 different places.
Okay, so first off, going back to our anal natures here, year-to-date expended and then pending and form stack and encumbered, it's like, so that's expended means they've spent it, encumbered means it's been properly submitted and it's just pending final approval, and pending and form stack means it's recently
It's just
submitted, so it hasn't even begun
Yes,
to
correct.
go through that. Okay, so we're in the right
Right,
order
yes.
of progression.
Yes.
And then available is after all that, what's left? Okay, so if I add up those 3, I'm gonna get the 6,500, this, is that correct?
6610.
Well, it's 6,500 compared to what is 3,500 in the last column,
So that's 10,000, right?
or
Yeah.
5,500.
The total is 661043, those 3 numbers,
All right,
and it matches the
It balances from-
38 available budget.
You guys are much better.
that's because I taught Greg Tang math.
There you go. There you go.
I do that too.
Yes. I got that.
Mental math. Need no thinking calculation. Yes.
It's one of the reasons we need to use the mid-10.
And that,
Then it's something I've been using for so many years after the from the Webster School was open. And this is the way I always get my budget there, and nobody can say, oh, you spent, no, let me go to my documents, because that document is signed for the bank president and the principal from the school.
correct.
So there's two of people that have it, so when they do the budget thing, so they know how much money they left, and then the secretary, they say, okay, let me see what was your last order for the P10, and it's more easy. So then your office and you're gonna go back and forth to the principal, this is wrong, like what happened right now. This is
And
something
and
that-
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
We use the P9 is what we use, and we have to do the same thing. We have to keep it balanced
Yeah.
ourselves. So I understand what you're
And
saying.
it's something else that we have to use in the training, the leaders had to know what is mean AR 100, AR 200. This is something about custodian and security,
Mhm.
because sometimes they get confused, who's paying, who's gonna cover, who's gonna do that forms, that the school, the principal, do the secretary, so it's one of the things I want for you, so we can let you know.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mr. David?
Thank you, yes, through the chair. So. Again, I want to learn more, but I know these things, but I want it for the public also. So encumbered. So we have a year-to-date expended, meaning they already paid that. They went through the P10 process, they went through whatever encumbered is gonna be defined in a second, that's already done. Then you have encumbered, that means what? This is more for the public and I to get solidify the definition. Yes, please.
May I try the layperson's answer? Encumbered means the bill's been submitted, but it hasn't been paid.
I just wanted to
Right.
confirm it, that's what it is.
So-
So the bill's been put in,
It's been put in, the invoices come in, but we haven't paid them out yet. Where form stack is, we've just started. We put our invoice in, we want approval, we want to order this. You get approved first, and then you get your items in, and you put your bill in, and that goes into income. So it's then moved from the form stack
perfect.
to,
So I want to
and
challenge
then
you.
when it's paid to year to date.
So I want to challenge you guys, just like Dr. Avery has done, because every single one that has a percentage that they went over their spending format, meaning their P10 hasn't been approved, it's only in that stage, and they're spending money that they don't even have. So we need to hold them accountable now, and I don't think it's fair to any campus to have to submit some of their money when they can do it. They maybe have a plan about it to give somebody that is being irresponsible, with all due respect to the word, irresponsible. Because, for example, I'll call every single one out, Barnum School has a pending right now of $4,766.46.
Correct.
That is over 544 that they have. That needs to be, ratified. They need to say that you submitted something as a P10 according to this. That's unacceptable. The other one I see here, Hammond School, an extra 2,108.28. That's on the P10 right now. That's bringing them over by 170. That should be rectified and fixed. The next one is Thomas Hooker, $837. That is over budget by 232.86. That should be fixed. 268.75 is for Cesar Partaya. That is $268.75. P10. That is bringing them over 265.70. The other one is 2,500. That is Park City Magnet. I'm gonna go get on that, but they're only over by $37.28. That's not that much of a big difference. $500 for Waltersville. They're exactly going over the budget. With all due respect to the word, on purpose, because they already should know, they already did all their budget already. That's $500 there. 2,154.78. John Winthrop. They're going over by $479.78. Unacceptable. The last one is Skane School, $681.75. They're going over by $296.87. Those are all because of their P10s. Nothing has been encumbered, nothing has happened. So let's hold them accountable, let's go to them and we'll work with them. Not against them, but work with them to fix. But I think Dr. Avery has,
This-
yeah,
Dr. Avery, if I may for a second, I just want to.
Yes, sir.
Am I reading this correctly, though? Just to make sure I understand. And then I have a question, but I'll let Dr. Avery go first. In the totals, for elementary schools and high schools. The available budget is 16,686 for the elementary schools. That means that's what's left despite the encumbered and the pending that we haven't spent. Is that correct?
Correct. Which is.
Does that take into account the overages?
Yes.
So the unspent money is actually higher if we looked at the schools that didn't spend theirs. But they've already taken out the overages in that amount.
Right.
So in a sense, I'll be clear, we do want to educate each school the way you, Albert, explained earlier, Mr. Benahan explained, working on the forms, make sure we get our system down. And your point is correct. We want to make sure nobody spends more than they're entitled to. They're doing us a favor this year because if we don't spend the money, it affects future allocations. Am I correct, Doug?
That affects future allocation?
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
That if we don't spend money, the next year our allocated money could be reduced because we're not using it. So in effect, those schools that are spending more are doing us a favor right now because those that didn't spend their full budget or didn't spend their budget, could affect our allocation in future years. So just to be clear about that. So while you want to talk to them about how to make sure they don't go over, and I've already heard that discussed procedurally, how we're going to fix that or work to improve that. This year in particular, ironically, they've done us a favor by spending more money than they were allocated, because that money would otherwise be lost back to the feds or whoever the state. So, okay. Dr. Avery, I'm sorry.
Well, I think it's important to understand, guys, the system that we're using right now doesn't do a lot of those checks and balances where, you have an email going to a principal to say, hey, you have this money to spend. The principal put the requisition in the system. It goes to somebody else for approval. And there's no real checks and balances. There, you hear form stack, you hear the P90. These are done manually, and it's just really convoluting the whole process. I do have to agree. We have to do good budgeting, guys. We're already under the spotlight of, are we using and spending the money the way we need to spend it in the right categories, right? So I'm not going to allow someone to not spend money and then somebody overspends money and you spend somebody. We're not doing that. That's not something that that's not good budgeting. That's just not good financing. You got to hold people accountable for spending what they have. And at that point, these campuses have activity accounts that if they go over, they need to pay their overage, and we keep it moving that way. That is what I'm going to request, Dr. Fega, to be able to do to make sure that we sum up. And the campuses that are not spending their money on parental involvement pieces, guess what, guys? They're not impacting their parents. That is a leadership issue. And so we got to go back to accountability again. Come on. It's not that when I was trained as a principal, guys, it was me. It was my campus. Everything that went through my campus, I was held accountable for it. But it was me because I didn't want anybody to think differently of me because I'm the principal running that particular campus. And so that's what we got to get back to. We got to get these individuals to say, hey, this is my campus. Everything that comes in and out is a reflection of me as the leader. And when we do that, we will make magic in Bridgeport Public Schools, guys. That is what we have to be able to do. So again, I like the conversation, but we have to streamline. My team has to streamline what we're doing and how we're doing the work. And so you guys hear me say it all the time. We got to be able to do a little bit more of the accountability side of it. And we're going to move that. It's a process, though. I mean, like I said, they're working through a system that is antiquated. We have to give them a little grace on it, but we still have to have a little bit of accountability as well. So we're going to get it right. I love the conversations, and I think it's good to have these. And again, it's just a process that we have to go through to make it right. So again, thank you for the time, Mr. Chair.
And just to be clear, my point was simply this year, there is that unfortunate reality. I don't disagree with Mr. Medina or Mr. Benahan about, and Dr. Fega about the setting up a system and what your point, holding people accountable for making sure it gets spent. We need to do that. We need, my attitude was last year, we didn't do that well.
Yeah.
This year, again, we repeated on this. This is a far better, I think, report than last year. Last year was really bad.
Yeah.
This is a vast improvement over last year, but we still know that we are, as we've discussed already tonight. I'm not trying to beat the dead horse, that we need to now take another step on the improvement, because last year was really bad, and this year it's better, but this was the result of a good last minute scramble in some ways. And we want to not be scrambling next year. We want to be spending it throughout the year as it should be, in a constructive way with constructive parent involvement in every school.
Yep.
Right. Using Mr. Benahan's wealth of knowledge and experience, as well as Mr. Medina.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Eric, for your information. I appreciate it. This is one of the reasons that I say about the P10, but we have to understand, because you haven't needed experience in I'm talking about this leader. We have to pull all these leaders, because when you say, I want to be the PAC president, PTSL president, you represent the school, you represent your parents, you represent the staff, you represent the students, you represent your community. I know they don't get paid for this as us, the board member too. But when you get this position, you have to take it seriously. Not because you want to get a title, not because you want this title to have a put in your resume. So they have to take it seriously, because you're working with money. You're working with community, you're working with parents. Like I said, you represent that school. Some of them, they don't want to do the job. Some of them, they want to do only have a title. Some of them, they come one time in the school, and the principal say, who's the PAC president? Because I really have the communication with some of them. So we have to let them know, listen, you have this position, this is your role. That's what we got bylaws. What does mean PAC president? What does mean ESO president? What is your job you have to do? How you spend the money? You don't do everything by yourself. You don't make like a Dr. Avery. He's the superintendent, but he had 9 board members. So he has to done with us. It's almost the same thing. So this is one of the reasons about the P10. So they don't have this issue, and then you don't go back and forth, back in the principal. Because I know the principal says the principal, they are busy. They got so many things that I'm going to take out of my hat for them, So for me, having another something else for the PAC and PTSL president, for me, it's not right. I know they have to communicate each other, but let's have this bit of PAC and PTSL leaders. And not only president, I'm talking the vice president and the secretary, that's the 3 federal. Let them know what is your job. This is what you have to do. This is your obligation as a leader from the school. This is not a game. But if you cannot do it, just step down and let another person do it. So it's more easy, and nobody have go back and forth. This is one of the reasons I'm doing P10 for so many years, and you have the amount. And one of the other things that the vendors. That's why I send you email early when you get a chance. It's not rushed. Because when they do action plans, you have to check the vendors. Why the reason, this is the vendor property to use for the parent. Are you ordering something takes for the parents? Are you ordering something for the school, for the staff when they don't supposed to? And some vendors like to abuse the budget because they think coming from Bridgeport Public School, something you can buy for $2, they can put it $8. So I know experience for many vendors. I know in the grand office is more over 50,000 vendors. But for me, when you get a chance, let them know they can vendors we don't use it no more. Delete it. Trying to put that list, when you get a chance, you have somebody put that list down because you still have that vendor there. Other thing we have vendors, they don't want to do business with Bridgeport Public School because they take forever to get paid for them. And they're amazing vendors. I know I got vendors, they always say yes, and they know they're gonna get paid late, but I said, Mr. Bennett, I'll do it for you because I know you and I know I'm gonna have my money. But some of them, they say, no, I'm not gonna get paid because they take forever. And always I ask this question, why does it take forever to get paid when the money is there? If it's something you ask for or you had to apply something, I understand. But when you know the money's there, why did it take so forever to get, to get paid? Any vendors, any person come to speed, anything, it take forever to speak. And that's not fair. Because if they doing something good for our parents or for the school or for the student, whatever workshop, it's not fair to take, pay. Some vendors, they said, I don't know, okay, just put it. I know I'm gonna get paid, but it's not fair. Some of them, we lose so many good vendors just because that. And talk about the checklist, and one of the things is very important when you get in is the action plans. The action plan is something that I like to sit down and go over, and trust me, when I say I'm gonna search, I will search that vendor to see, if it was properly, and you spend the money the way it is. But like I said in the beginning, we have to be sure these leaders, when we do the work, the training for them, let them know, well, what's me this job? Are you ready to take it or not? If you cannot take it, respect your decision, take it, be sure another person they can take it. Because you're working with money. Because when Hartford see you don't spend the money the way it's supposed to be, they're checking. I said, well, they don't need the money, we're gonna put less. So then, they check everything, that the last penny. And when I see this over 110, 100% of whatever, this is one of the reasons that I say is the pre-10 that will help you 100%. But we're gonna sit down, I'm gonna show you so we can train all these leaders, so we do better. I know some of them, they're amazing. Some of them, they say, I don't have the time. So if you don't have the time, just let another person have it. Because, I know a school, they do a lot of things. But I don't want either be attacking too much the principals and assistant principal, because I know they have the communication. But when a leader have this job, you need to be responsible. If you cannot be responsible, so don't take it, because we don't want conflict, we don't have any issue, stuff like that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Let me just conclude, I think, with the following. I noticed, the various ones that are at 50, 60, 70%. And, I want to know why. And I don't want to know why tonight. And I don't want to know why per se this year. But we should be able to know, somebody should know why. In every one of these instances, we should know why we didn't hit 100% or why we didn't hit the 95 to 100% figure. So what I'm hearing is that in order to address this problem, Mr. Bennett and you are going to be working before we get into next year on developing the systems that we need to make sure that we start the year, we know which presidents are coming back and which are good and functional, and where we need to provide more support. Again, goes back to this whole concept, and help them out to make sure that they know how to do and what to do, and provide them the skills and resources, the training they need to do their job. And that you two are going to work on developing that, because we used to have a separate committee for this, but this is going to be sort of like a sub work, and I'm relying on that. Just so that we're ready to hit the ground running at the start of the next year with all the stuff that we need to do, so that we don't have a repeat.
And
No, you go ahead.
one of the things that we're working on and we've talked about is doing a path retreat. That's what came out of that meeting yesterday. In the conversation about the path convention, how large it is, and we are looking into the funding source for you. But using that date of May 17th to meet with, like you said, the principals, the assistant principals, I'm sorry, my apologies, the president.
I'm like, a what?
No.
We didn't talk about.
I know.
I know.
Vice president,
Yes.
secretary, to do some of this work, including talking about what impeachment is, and then talking about the action
Great.
plans for next year, so that they are prepared with the action plan before we even.
Right. before we finish this.
And still having a breakfast and a
Yeah.
lunch together and working,
And then you can eat,
Oh, I'm
Go ahead, I'm not holding it that tight.
Um. Nothing. And it's true, so they can know each other, because sometimes to school, they can work together. Let's say, Basi High School next to Korea and Cesar Batalla. If you don't have this amount of, sometimes high school is a little tough to bring parents as experience, but you know, with anything event I would do in Basi, I work a month before and every day, that's why sometimes I got people. So if you see, let's say Basi High School, you know, when you high school kids, parent, you know, something to come, but at least what was Cesar Batalla work with Korea and you believe they can do something nice, you know, stuff like that. And I agree with you. And they can all these leaders, they can know each other. Listen, I have this situation, you have a vendor, do you have a speaker, or somebody, you know, stuff like that, communicate each other, they can know, you know, who is who.
You raised, Marge, you mind if I ask one question before? You raised a different question. Can you use the 24,000 left to do that training?
Now, this,
What number you said?
We have, Mr. Medina, 16,686 and 7,248 unspent.
If I,
No, if I can finish making my point. But you can, you may not. So we have approximately $24,000 in unspent money. And the question that I'm asking these two first, if I may,
no problem.
is
Don't give you the,
can we use the money for the kind of end of the year training that you were talking about? And quickly before the deadline, encumber it. So that we are legally within the confines of using that money appropriately is what I'm asking.
this money is for the school. I know the school will have it done soon, but we had the budget for the parent convention.
Right.
That money for the parent convention, right? Is the one you're gonna use for trade, you know, to have
Right.
training with the students. But this money cannot
This
be.
money, after the deadline, this money is just not spent. If the school hasn't submitted it and form stack, I mean.
Yeah.
By now. You know, within the next day or two, they might submit, you know, or yesterday, the day before, they might have submitted a few more. But the deadline is about today, tomorrow,
When is the deadline?
Thursday,
It was.
this week. I think it's the end of this week.
And.
The end of this week, so if it's not submitted by the end of this week, it becomes lost for the year. Can we take the loss for the year money before it gets lost and use it to do, to enhance the training that you're talking about?
In
That's what I'm
personal,
asking.
I believe, and you correct me, we can't. We cannot be using the money.
It has to be fully used
It has
in
to be
school.
in each school.
Let's look into that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can ask for clarification,
I'm not
but
trying to do anything illegal,
Yeah.
anything wrong. I want to make sure
yeah, you can ask.
it's kosher, but if we can do something like that, we have this unspent money and the training you're talking about, I understand the value and importance of it.
Yeah.
And if we have this 10, 20,000, 25,000 more that's left over, whatever it ends up being,
Mhm.
can we submit an encumbrance that would say, we're going to do a retreat with the returning officers before the end of the year to provide them addition, not the convention,
Yeah.
but just a day of training.
Yeah.
Where we have, meals and
Yeah.
daycare if we need it or whatever, that sort of
You
allows them to
can
come.
verify for that, but I believe if that happened, had to be whatever money left they have each school had to do something, whatever, like I told you, P10, to make sure something's a workshop for the parent. It's gonna be a situation that I know, as an experience, they cannot be using. But you can verify, they cannot use it, they were lost. But I know either this week is the deadline, me and you, we can work all the school or visit the school or have a meeting with them to see, listen, I want you to have a meeting, I need to have a meeting with you this afternoon, this morning, and I'm free. So we can go to be sure to spend the must they can, the money. Like, I know about the training is the money for the parent convention, but I believe they don't use it like you said, like we said, they're gonna lose.
Okay.
But you can verify if they can use it.
I apologize,
No, I was just gonna add on to, we're also gonna be proactive in that in our May admin council meeting on our agenda with the principals and letting them know the items that we want for them to turn in. So for instance, on that list is the leisure pack president and some of these questions that they're thinking about it at the end of this year, which will tell you nice info. Sure.
So you can send it an email, let them know the principal, listen, I want you to use the update with your PAC and PTSO president because I have the list. There are some of them, they're not living here. The phone is changed, the email's not working. You know, I'm like, okay, if you think that person's still in school, you probably need to talk to them. If they was not, let's say the PAC person, they can say, I don't want nobody to know my information. So why you there for? I'm sorry, but why you there for? Not only because I know parent person, you know, they work. I don't know, not like me, I was every day in Bassett High School. That's my second home. But some that they cannot because they're working, they see, they do things like that. So how the parent, they will communicate with you, how the principal will communicate with you. You know, I'm sorry. Another thing, with the chair, and I know that was coming from you, we're supposed to have somebody else, I believe, Janet Aaron, you requested to be here, come, you know, because I believe she's the one working with the PAC leader, stuff like that, and this is the second time I believe that she's not here, so I want to know what happened.
I think, she had a prior engagement for tonight. And then, you know, and I think most of the questions that we were going to be discussing tonight, we knew that we had the answers for those. But she had a prior engagement for tonight with the woman.
I'm sorry, and you know, I respect everybody's decision of life, but this was a request, me 2 weeks before, Mr.
No,
Trevor.
I did not make that clear 2 weeks before. Dr. Saki was away last week, so by the time I caught up with him, it was Monday that I emphasized.
Wait, last week. Oh, yeah, yes, last week. But I know, do we start, well, the House City Council, you know, tonight, upstairs and everything, but our meeting start right there. At least, you know, we can put it now, something we can, at the beginning,
Well,
we can hear.
I think that, you know, insofar as we should conclude this discussion tonight, but revisit it as a sort of end of the year look as to where we're at. At the next meeting, it might be useful to have her here too and know what she is. Because we're looking at what kind of training has been offered, but we want to have a sort of understanding of what's been done this year and what we need to work on. Improve on this. It is an improvement that you presented, but we wanted to see what else we need to do to make sure that we're, because, you know, Alberts says all the time, and he's correct. You know, the more parents that we have involved, the more parents that participate, the stronger our school district can be. And in light of the fight we're having right now for more resources from the state, if we had strong backs in every school, that certainly help us in situations like that too. So,
And that is one of the things where Sarah, they called us. We have someone coming to talk also with them about advocacy and talking to how to support our schools and write our congressman and help support us in this fight. So for that,
yeah,
money. So
it's not the Congress people who really need it right now. We can talk about that more later.
So, sorry, Mr. Chair, I have a former State PAC president that will contact you. They have experience, you know, because we're partnered on the PAC BTSO and helps us to give guidance and keeping, you know, how that you can communicate and work with your principal and with your.
that's.
Like I said, and I told you in the beginning, I'm here to help you, to support you, you know, not to, telling you what to do, because that's not my role, that's my job. I need to help people can work together for the best of Bristol Forward School, what the service with that sacred, you know. So I appreciate everything you're doing. Thank you for your time, sir.
Any final questions anywhere? Thank you very much. So again, I'm noting that we're continuing on the suspension stuff. We're continuing on this at the next meeting, just as an ongoing sort of review. If it doesn't that, then I'm moving on to the next item, which is how we did on.
Hey.
I so record want to note and thank you for having Mr. Panas here with us tonight. I know that his counterpart is unavailable because she's out. I want to be clear. We had asked to have both math and language arts represented. But we were lucky to get that.
Absolutely. I want to start with an overview, just to give you some context. So this was in your package that you received. I like to start with where were we at the beginning of the year or the end of last year, 23-24. Our math, this is the Smarter Balance testing for grades 3 through 8. Well, this is why it's on here.
Yeah.
It was 20%. For math was approximately 12%. These were students that performed at or met or exceeded grade level standards. And when we compare that to where the section below is the 24-25 results. And this year, we did not do all of the IABs. We only had 3 sessions, and when you combine that and look at the results of the IABs that we did take, our ELA is coming in at 11%, while math is coming in at 13%. I'm gonna.
Okay, now you have it on speed.
So in the blue is your 23, the very last column is your
I
23,
see 23, 24, and I see 22, 23.
and then you go down below.
To 19.9, and we went from 10.8 to 12.3.
But I'm going down below.
Yeah.
These are the 24, 25 cumulative to date as of 4/11. The cumulative results from all the IEDs that we took. And which is, although it doesn't have all the content areas that a Smarter Balance assessment would have, it does give us an indication on how our students are doing, working towards grade level. ELA, we came in at 11%, and math, we came in at 13%.
13 and 11 that are at or above,
Correct,
that met or exceeded level 3 or 4.
correct.
The green color
Green equates to the final column.
is the above standards or the student that met the standard. The yellow is at or near the standard.
Okay, that's what thank
Yeah.
you. You know what I'm asking.
I got you. I'm right there.
So it's actually then in, let's stay with math since I'm talking to the math man. I see 13% and 35%. I'm reading that wrong?
We gotta be just a little careful because
Okay,
the green one,
Mhm.
although it's called above, and by the way, I actually made it bigger because I couldn't see that. So I did it for math and reading, and couldn't see that thing, so. Yeah. I'm not struggling with that. That's one down to the wife over there. Thank you. I apologize. I couldn't see it. Thank you.
I was training.
So yeah, I know, I was too. Forget about it.
And I got my glasses and also,
When you see on the top is the ECPAC, okay, that was taken at the end of last year. And the ECPAC is the full. You have a magnifying glass, the full cumulative, and so I think the point of Ms. Hughes is making is that, we're making growth. Because the kids that ended last year at 12.3 are now on level, taking on level tests, because the IABs, the interim assessments are on level. 13% of those kids are on level right now. And 35% of them, if you look at the bottom, 35% of them in the yellow are almost there. Are almost there. So they're growing, and that matches the other data that we had that I think you saw last time. I actually saw your videos,
Yep.
and that data shows that we're making growth for a while. So this is another type of data that you can use to triangulate. I call it triangulate because you can't, when you go to the doctor, you just don't take one blood test and say, oh, you have cancer. No, you have a lot of different tests to predict that, right? So same thing happens with instruction. We have to see it with the full data.
Yeah, I want to make sure that I understand, be clear, me.
Yeah.
I am not a test believer.
I don't.
And so I think there's a lot of flaws in standardized testing. But I want to make sure we're comparing apples and apples. I want to have an idea that, we're looking at. And so when I see that in 23, 24, we had 12.3% at or above, which is what level 3 or 4 is, right?
Yeah.
Met
Yes.
or exceeded.
Yes.
what's the equivalent number so far in our diagnostic testing, if you will, in our anticipatory testing, whatever you want to call it, because we haven't gotten our. So what are we seeing? Because what I see here says it's 13%. So that's exceeded. And so that the yellow group of 35%, if we get some of those to like step up in the last few months, then we will even exceed by an even greater amount what we did the previous year. Am I reading that correctly? Okay, so, but in language arts, then my concern becomes that I'm seeing 11%
Correct.
at or above. And last year was virtually 20, 19.9% at or above. So where, now again, we got 41% that are close. So if we, get, a quarter of the 41%, we're about where we were last year. If we get more than that, then we're. This the expanded version of ELA. Enlarged.
I would, even though what was said is true, that the at or near, there will be kids that can rise above and go into the green, if you will, to be exceeding.
Yes.
However, my experience in other schools and other districts is that when you look at your IABs, it's those students who have met the achievement standard, that's what the green is.
Sorry, I want to make sure that we're all following you. Okay.
I would just caution you when you're looking at that analysis, so that when you look at ELA, for instance, and we're saying for the overall, that I've got 41 and 11, okay, that that entire 41 is not going to meet.
Well, I get that. I said,
I just-
if we get a quarter of that, if we got half of that, we would be, well above. If we got a quarter of that, we would be at.
And my point is, I've done studies on this in other schools, looking at when you do all the IABs over a year, and then you compare it on a student by student basis to the actual essay Smarter Balance results, that it's the only reliable at this point in the year is those students that are in green, even though you're right, you can have students that rise into the green during the Smarter Balance.
Okay,
It's
so-
not going to be.
I understand your point. And so then what you're saying is that we are significantly below where we
Yes.
were last year.
Yes.
Because
So we understand.
quarter of getting the at or near is realizable to me.
It could be.
But you're saying historically, in your experience, that's not likely to.
I would just caution you with
I
that.
understand.
Tito, you want to finish your math analysis?
Yeah.
Before I go into the deal?
Sorry.
So there, just so you bring you back to the last conversation on this,
Yep.
you have the interim assessment block, which is the IABs, right? And you also have the FIABs, which are the focus interim blocks. Now, these words in math are used interchangeably, but they have slightly different meanings, okay? An FIAB has a very narrow set of standards. I say standards, I mean like telling time, right? That could be one standard. And, so you have typically 1 to 3 of those standards, but they have deeper concepts. They dig deeper. They have questions that touch upon some deeper areas within that telecom. It might be lab standard, for example, or something. As an aside, the IAB will have content across different domain and a full domain. So you will have, for example, in equations, for example, you might have and decimals and percentages all within that domain. So you have a broader domain. In math, we've done less of the IAB than the FIABs, and the reason for that is because we match it to the book. We use it as as kids complete those chapters in the book, we find something that they could assess, so we can see where they are. And then we can see where can we use what we call the win block, the what I need block, the intervention time or the acceleration time. okay, to help those students move forward. That's one. Two, we actually have the teacher look at with the students, all the different mechanical parts, all the computer-based parts with the student. Because these assessments have, you know, the IABs have the same type of mechanical pieces of computer-based pieces as the SBAC. So it will be like a practice for the SBAC. So it's a plus for the students to know. And last but not least, we have the teachers look at the language. Why? Because SBAC uses some phrases that might not be used in the typical book, although our book is pretty good with it, but it invites for more practice. Okay, so those are the three things that we want to go back to when you were teaching, but you know, that's some of them. So that's one. And then last but not least, we have met with some administrators, and teachers to help do what we call error analysis. And Eric, the beauty of this program is that it allows you to see each of the questions in your class, and it tells you, you know, like you have a list of students, and it allows you to see, you know, who got that question right and wrong. So you can see down the line, oh, question number one, you have, you know, 75% of the kids got it correct. But question number two, only 10% had it correct. So I'm gonna go to question number two, and I'm gonna, you know, share that with my students, and then throughout the week or throughout, you know, I'm gonna have several of those type of questions to ensure that the students learn. So in a way, this is not just a test that we give. Is my point. It's actually a test that is gonna help you in teaching the content and to tie the book, which is a very good book, to the content that they will be assessed. So that's basically what it is. You can see the data straight ahead there, and I will, you know, I would, you know.
Mr. Woodson, do you have any questions?
No, not at this time.
Mr. Medina?
No, but I thank you for using that word language, maybe in in coming into the Bible report. That was one of my issues that I had. Because you would use a certain word and I learned that word, but then when I took a test, it said it differently with a different word and I didn't know what I was doing because word problems were my worst at math until I found that word problems were my worst. And I'm a mathematician. I can classify myself as a mathematician, as my other project. You know, and but it was something that language was a certain thing. When you said it different, I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do now? I know how to do it, but when and then that tool part that you guys share that word tool also to know that data is coming back to know question number two, only 10%. Why in the world? Why did that happen? What was it? And it might be that neighborhood. Knowing the demographics of Bridgeport is big, you know, because just that alone can take the student out. You can sit them down and tell them, remember we did this in class, this is the one that we said this, and boom, that student will get the answer like that. But and that was me. That was that student. Mr. Carlson will write anything on the board. I wrote it in my notebook. If he wrote, I love chocolate chip cookies, I wrote in my notebook, I love chocolate cookies. He wrote, you know, because that words matter. I tied it into the assignment to do the work. So I appreciate using that thing and knowing that that is a key part of it, especially again, with the demographics that we have in our city of, you know, English as a second language and stuff is huge. And I would like to know that to figure out if we have that such data to know, you know, by race, how are they doing, even by race in a sense, because we can see how, listen, I'm the one that goes crazy with teachers, you know, numbers matter. So you can have this population doing great, this population doing not so great, and that's going to affect the average. You talk about average. That being said, I share this one, and I believe this one is the same thing as, you know, the graph. So when I did the math at need, at or near, and the percentages of by grade, I added it up and then I get a percentage from that. It's giving me 40%, but yet I'm seeing numbers here that's giving me 35% at need or near. On the above, it's pretty close. When I did the math and did addition and the percentage, it's giving me 14. You guys giving me a data of 13. The other one is off by 5% according to my information. And the other, the yellow, and then the green is off by 1%.
I can answer that.
Absolutely, you're
When you,
the fun fact.
when you look at the aggregate, the 24-25 results, that includes all of the IABs or FIABs that people gave in math. Okay, whereas when we showed you this section, this was the Q3 results, and they were very explicit. So
For
for
the most part here, got you.
okay, so that would be your difference, but I thought it would be of value to see that, and to your point, using these IABs as tools as opposed to an assessment or a mark.
Yeah.
But using it as a tool, you're exposing our children to the language. You're being able to teach them that academic language that they may not be using in a classroom. And just the test taking skills, because there's questions that say, answer 2 questions, or part A and part B. And that's not something that our students are used to. So you need to give them that opportunity and make them alert and in letting them know when this says you have 2 questions to answer, in order to get it right, you have to answer the 2 questions. You can't just go on to the next one or hit submit. And that's the value in working and using the IABs, and then being able to create. So one of the things that we've done with our 6 schools is we were able to pay teachers. I went in, and I know Tito has done it as well in other schools. We go in and we do teacher education in how do you use this tool to create your small groups. And then using the problem, how can you use that to teach them the language, the test taking skills, other, in addition to the content, obviously.
I appreciate it. As a bus driver, we will always do that. I did the busing in Bridgeport and the city bus, and then we go with an accident or an incident. We went back and visited the incident and the problem to fix it to get the right, solution to what we could have done to correct it. And in math, it's like that. Go back to it, find out why did you get it wrong? What was it? Where did you, so I appreciate that does, it's gonna help the student. And
In addition to
it helped me.
I'm sorry.
No.
In addition to that, this year, we also met with our principals, the same, like what they did with the teachers, we also met with the principals, looked at the data. And made sure that they understood that what they needed to go, because at the end of the day, they are the instructional leaders in the class, in their building, so they need to be more visible in the classroom, supporting and modeling and providing that coaching that they need, just because they can look at their own data and own their data. So we've been doing, all 3 of us have been doing data along with Mr. Panas.
Question, but I want you to answer. You had another comment first.
I was just gonna tie into what Mark was saying that. Actually, it was the points that Gita made that. When you look at the data as a whole, it's more impactful because you can see correlation between it. These assessments are so close together that it's incredible. For example, the measures of academic progress, the math test, NWA math test, we call it. We're in NWA before. That test is called the math test, the measure of academic performance for math. And so that test, what it shows a quadrant. And in the bottom quadrant, there are kids that are high achievers, but they didn't move. So we saw in some schools that there were kids in that quadrant that were high achievers that didn't move. Well, those are because you're focusing so much of your low kids that those kids did not move as much. So when we saw that in the data, we said that's an easy fix. We're going to make sure that we have enrichment tasks throughout. And as an administrator, that administrator is going to take care of taking a look to see what kind of enrichment tasks are done for those students. Yeah, and even though you're meeting with these kids that are low 3 times a week, and these kids that are in the yellow, right, 2 times a week, and the kids that are in the green, you're gonna meet 1 time a week with that enrichment group, and you're gonna set up the computer program when you have those centers in such a way that you target the 3 groups. So it's much more powerful. It's actually more work for the teacher, to be honest, but it's more powerful because it's gonna help everybody grow together.
That is one of the things we've been saying, that, accountability index is the growth model, right? So we want to make sure that everyone is growing. So sometimes in the classroom, what happens is you're at or above, you are not pushing that because you're pushing. And that is what we saw. And that was the discussion we were having with our principals. as to how do we push this? So what can you do in your classrooms? And what that small group is not just intervention we are talking about. We want to push them with enrichment. So we're making them owning their own data.
No,
I like that.
I'm extraordinarily biased about this stuff. I've spent years being told, you know, teach to the yellow ones. Because the more of those yellow ones we can get over the line into the green, the better our scores become. And it's just not, I mean, kids move at different rates, different ways. And I understand that it's useful and I would do the same thing. I would see a particular question on the test that too high a group percentage and we'd spend some time looking at that. You know, that's useful. But we're still teaching to the test. We're not teaching the subject, and I understand the why. I have this, so it affects my, you know, but not what you're doing, not my judgment of you or anybody else, and I know it's what we're supposed to be doing. But it's just so wrong and so like,
Can I give you another lens to look at it through?
yeah,
If we look at it through our instruction, right, our curriculum is based on standards. That guides our curriculum, right? And this is based on the standards. So we're not teaching to the test, we're teaching to the standard.
yeah, I understand, but the two are not, I'm not gonna have I'm not trying to have resurrect this debate. But the fact is, and it's just, I'm expressing my own,
And I appreciate,
you
I
know,
appreciate that.
bias in this area, that's all. And so I do understand what Mr. Planas was saying about using that to help guide and review certain areas where you may want to make sure that you've improved it. You know, and you want to go back and revisit a lesson. And the question I had more generally was, are we finding and are we allowing the teachers the time? Because remember, the problem we had at the beginning of the year was that we were putting them on such a tight schedule, they were not allowed to do. And, you know, one of the problems, you know, beyond the logistical problem of when there's an outbreak of a cold or a flu and attendance is low or something else is going on and you miss, you know, I mean, the lesson doesn't get, you've missed a third of the class covering a significant area and you have to revisit it. There's also this notion of you look at a result, you see, oh, here's an area where I want to go back and revisit. Are we allowing teachers the time to go back and do that in our pacing guides?
Yes, one of the initiatives, and the other useful information we get from this is it also helps inform us. Now so for instance, it's a great segue to ELA. When I look at ELA and then look at the change from the prior year. And then I went in and we do the error analysis with our principals and we're looking at, you know, where is the missing link? What's happening? Then we also, so for our kids in from the literacy side, it's those higher level, higher order thinking for comprehension and the critical skills that they need, things to do. So for this particular test, specifically, students had difficulty identifying ideas to support opinions or identifying a main idea to support detail. Okay, so those are higher order thinking skills that the kids have to get to. But to your point, the other thing that we're doing is we're taking a look at, okay, let's take a look at our curriculum. And one of the things that we noticed in our K-6 ELA curriculum, actually K-8, is we're not having that instructional focus. So now what we're doing as part of curriculum revisions, working with teachers and the directors this summer, is now we're go back to these lessons and give them the focus so that we can focus on these higher order thinking skills. It's not just the lower level skill. You need to do the lower level in order to get there, but to really make sure that our teachers we're supporting them and saying, listen, this, you know, it's like a continuum. We're going to start here. Now we're going to build up and support that. So it's ways for us to revise our thinking. To your point on the pacing, that we heard teachers loud and clear, and we are doing away with day 1, lesson 1, day 2, lesson 2. Mm-hmm. And what we're doing is we're reviewing our scope and sequencing, which is also has been off. We're improving that. That's one other issue that we learned. And then the third thing is that we're giving them a range. Okay, we're covering all of the important, significant focus areas before April break, right? Because testing starts next Monday. So we're doing it before April break. We're covering the things for the lesser focus for the grade level after, from now to the end of the year. But that's our primary focus. We're giving teachers a window. So we're saying between now and October, mid-October, we need to focus on this unit. And then we're also interlaying what FIABs or IABs are appropriate to give so that we can have a closer touch point on where our kids stand, because we didn't start this until December. And so that's late.
I recognize that when I asked my question.
That's way too late. We
We had,
need to move it up and do this throughout the year.
yes.
So we learn, we learn things from these results as well.
And going to what Mr. Medina asked earlier, it's not simply a linguistic problem we have with the aspect. It's a cultural problem. And do we still, I mean, you mentioned the quality of the material that you think we're using now. But there's still I don't know how the materials, I guess, in math, I can see it a little bit, in language arts becomes a little harder to address the cultural problem of testing.
Well,
When I've seen some of those questions that come in, and it's like, are you kidding me? You really expect these children to understand what that is asking and talking about?
but if you front
It's not
load,
in their realm of experience.
right, but if you front load that in your that conceptual understanding of what do these words mean, what is the academic skill they need to do, our kids will get there. So one of the things that we're doing for next year as well is we are phase 2 of this year was tier 1 work with our teachers. Next year is going to be differentiation. 15% of our students, we have 30% of our students are multilingual learners, 20% are special ed. Every week, we're meeting with the multilingual director, and we're meeting with the special ed director, and we're brainstorming ideas on how we can support our teachers. Because this year, the content directors worked with our teachers, showing them where in the resources you can go. We're going to kick it up a notch. We're going to actually put that location of the differentiation into the unit plans for them so that they don't have to go searching for it, right? The second thing that we're going to do is also really giving them time during the back to school and talking about differentiation, talking about how can I differentiate from my multilingual learners? Do I even know? Are they a L1 for writing and reading? Or are they at L3? Those are very different instructional strategies that you're going to use with the student, depending on whether it's their lost link scores, using their lost link scores to guide that differentiation process. And same thing with our special ed students.
The beauty of having a book is it resources to help you. I don't think we had that. Our books are 5 years old. So we haven't had a book for math, K8 or even K12 before that in about 15 years. One solid book to run. So the beauty of having good resources, solid resources, is that when you want to differentiate, there's different parts that you could take a look at. And our book now has stations. I mean, it actually has too much. You have to actually, go through it and pick and choose when you want. It has so much that you can, if you try to do everything, you go nuts. But yeah, it's very powerful. The resources that they have at hand now help them with that process because you have a lot of needs.
But it's still, my voice doesn't teach the cultural problems in that aspect. And, if we want to reach our children, we're teaching where they are. The concepts that we want to teach them, whether it's just identifying the reasons why something happened and explaining that as answering for your math points, using aspects of life that they experience and understand. And when you get a question on an aspect that has nothing to do with any reality you've ever experienced, that affects your ability to comprehend what you're being asked to do. And I don't know if that's gotten better or not, but it's been a problem in the past when I've watched it. And even some of the ones we use, the the tests during the year are asking questions that, you know, the kids are going, "Hmm?" But, and so we want to make sure that but you know, again, that at some point we want to make sure they're learning math and they're learning reading. and
Right.
understanding.
And that's the whole thing, you know, what they might not be able to understand the background, you know, they don't have the background knowledge of saying, talking about maybe skiing someplace and they've never gone to that. However, what we're talking about is giving them the tools of just reading comprehension. So they might not have like, you know, 2% or 5% of that skill, but then they will be able to utilize what they know just to answer the question, citing evidence and going back to it and doing that. And so that's all we can do because we can change what the SBAC, you know, content is going to do.
Well,
And the Common
that's
Core,
correct.
the Common Core standards were created with the intent of so if instructed properly, right, created with the intent that you don't have to have background knowledge, that you can learn the skill to read something and figure out, use the tools within the text to figure out what they're talking about. And that's also part of the instruction.
The vast majority of the questions now are very much mathematical. Like they're not in the problem solving, the problem sense. That introduces different things that might be out of the realm of what it could do. To give you an example, one of the questions that kids had difficult time in third grade was when rounding to the nearest 10, what is the least whole number that rounds to 840? And that's, you really have to know the content to really answer that question. It's not like, oh, we're gonna round to the nearest 10, 840. We're gonna go and look at the neighbor and, you know, this is about thinking. This is not just about
Application.
this is about applying. And the context of it is it's agnostic. Does that have any
It,
you know
in that context, if you have a word problem about skiing, then you have a problem.
yeah.
If you have a word problem, you have a. But that's not our point.
No,
Let me ask you, to shift to, you want to add on language arts?
No, I think I covered everything.
And then,
Unless you had questions.
well, no, we had identified student growth as an area that you raised at the last meeting that you wanted to emphasize. So I wondered if you had any final thoughts that you wanted to add about that. Because I want to continue that focus, because to me, that's the greatest focus, is to watch, you know, are our students growing? And how are we seeing that?
Our year-end benchmark, which will also be given within the next couple of weeks as well, before the end of May, will give us more of that information. And then, of course, when we get the Smarter Balance results, we'll see that as well.
That's why you particularly emphasize the importance of looking at growth versus the scores. And I don't disagree with that. I agree with that. And so I wanted to make sure that we were looking at that to begin to engage in that discussion at this committee level and beyond.
But, and that's what we did with our principals. When we met with our principals, we said, here's where your kids were at the beginning of the year. Here's the middle of the year. You know, why is this grade not growing? We're not seeing any evidence that, let's say, we look at phonics. Why are these kids not moving along faster than we would expect them to be at the middle of the year? Why are they going back? So those are the kinds of conversations. And then our principals then in turn, they go and they're doing their common planning time with their grade levels. They would further explore that. And then next year with our data teams, we're going to kick it up a notch as well.
Which would lead me to my last sort of question in that area was, as you do that, I would assume citywide, you're able to identify areas that we're not doing right well at, and whether it's math or language arts, and then we're going to develop improve that. Strategies.
That's what I was touching on today with the ELA. It's comprehensive. We're not focusing on
that.
Yeah.
higher level.
And it's just not, that's it's a continuing problem. And so the question is, how do we deal with it?
We have to do a better job in giving guidance to teachers within our curriculum, right?
And
Well,
additionally,
I get that. I get that. Yes.
looking at foundational skills, because comprehension doesn't start in third grade.
I get that too.
So we need to start with
No, I don't disagree with you there. I mean, if we start to get the additional resources that we want, if we start being able to do the interventions that we want, then the change will happen very slowly. It will not happen overnight, but it will happen. Because our kids are quite capable.
Yes.
We just aren't providing the opportunity and the support that are needed.
We desperately need coaches in our schools.
Mhm.
And you look at every urban district in the state, whether it's Hartford, New London, Waterbury, everyone has coaches. Where those coaches are doing targeted focus with their teachers.
When Blackham finished second in the Lone Pine competition, whatever it's called, years ago, we had 1.5 reading coaches and 1 math coach and 1,200 students.
Yeah.
And the first place school was Barnum School in Stratford, which is about a quarter of the size of Blackham, and had 3 full-time reading tutors and 3 full-time reading coaches. Yeah. And that's a working class blue collar suburb. That's not out into the Gold Coast districts where they have even more distance, but that is what we all know we want to be able to do is when we identify a problem or a need, whether it's emotionally, socially, or whether it's academically, we can deal with it ASAP.
Right.
And if we do that, then our children will start, not falling behind in that kindergarten, first, second grade period that is so important foundationally. And then you'll see that.
Fluency and reading comprehension and everything will come.
And at the end of the year, we'll present to you those areas and those, so we can actually look at growth.
Yeah, I mean, because that's really, it is, children are growing. They may not show the test scores per se, but there is that other growth that they do.
And they're going within the band, you know what, even in the red, there are students who didn't start it at that and.
Right, they were down by the red end of the yellow, but now they're up at the green end of the yellow,
Yes,
and you're not seeing that on this chart.
yes,
That's
but
growth.
it doesn't show here,
Yeah.
but definitely that's why the accountability index at the big level, that is what it will show. And they take that into consideration.
Going back to the growth question, and I think using the map and NWEA, I think it's 0 point. If it's clearer, where you can actually monitor the growth, because it's been 3 times. a year.
Yes, yes.
And I think the hope is that we're going to be having that for ELA as well next year, so at least math is clearer than we have.
Oh, we don't,
We still have another year.
We have another year of this, and
We have one.
we can't do it next year.
We get the money. It's all.
We tried.
yes.
As always say, and I would never be tired to say this, as the board members, we are that because the community trusts us, right? And when we trust you guys, big fan of you guys do the best thing and good job, I could do the best they can. That's why we have to let another staff, we're here to help you and support you. We the professional want to try to see what we can do to plan whatever we have to do to be sure you're ready to give education to our kids. We are not perfect, but we try the best we can, as I've always said, together and with respect communication is a great successful, so it's something that I always say this, we are like the root of the tree. So branch and the lead and everything is our student, the staff and everything, so we are to be strong, to be sure they know we're strong, the rules. And keep forward. So as I said, the community trust us, we trust you. We can have a great successful, but thank you for everything you guys do. I'm very appreciative.
Let me, I absolutely agree with what Mr. Manning said. Let me ask though, if we don't have that ability in math, in language arts or ELA, so reflecting my age. How are we measuring growth? Because at the last meeting, you lit up about, let's talk about growth.
Right.
That's a more exciting discussion, and I couldn't agree with more. That is a more exciting discussion. But how are we measuring that growth?
So
So it may not, if that's a longer discussion, then I would want to continue that, in a future meeting, but
we can do that our next meeting.
yeah, I really, I understand, having seen, I can see, I saw my kids make their progress, but in reading, how are we measuring it as a district? And a teacher can see the growth in the classroom, but how do we see it in the district?
Through our benchmarks.
Yeah.
We have our K3, we do the
So
digital.
what is it we don't have then that you said?
Well, our current benchmark that we're using for reading comprehension is not, doesn't give you as much information as for instance, the NWEA. The NWEA really maps out growth in my opinion,
I agree. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
One of the things that we would like to do is to invest in NWEA for ELA. However, that's another $150,000. And right now, because we do have another year left of the products that we're using now, we want to finish that up and see, but we're not in a position to spend money right now.
Based on that we know.
But we can still measure, we're still measuring growth. Sure.
Well, I understand how a teacher's measuring growth. I'm trying to figure out how the district's measuring it.
Well, I mean,
How the school is measuring, so that would be worth looking at. Since we're gonna have to do that again for another year.
Yeah.
What you have in mind is it's easy to see when Mr. Planet says, well, we can measure the growth because we have this tool. You're saying we don't have this tool, so
We
we're
have other tools.
developing our other tools. That are not. They're not what we would like to have, but that's what we have. So we're working, so maybe we could spend a little time talking about that.
Yeah.
and we're gonna use more IAVs
Mhm.
next year and time them evenly throughout the year so that we can use that as well.
And we could make a comparison across years when we. do
Yes.
it.
Yes.
So that's a good thing. We haven't had that data.
Because what I would love to do is be able to show you in this IAB, these were the percentage of students that were well below, right? As compared to, and that's one of the things that we did with our principals at the beginning of the year, because they had growth action plans that they developed. And we looked at each student, where are they on the continuum? And then how can we support them in their growth? So that looking at all students, we're not just singling out those cusp kids. We're not just looking at the kids that are already there, or just focusing on the well below standard. Kids that are performing at that level, we're looking at all our students.
And for me, guys, I'll tell you the truth, like I told Dr. Avery, and I told Dr. Saki and Dr. Figa and everything. My benchmark when it comes to all this is those people that you guys are working with, those principals and those teachers, that they know that they're getting that support from you guys. And I'm just like, I'm in fact, happy and enjoy because we're all working together. That's where my benchmark is, and that's where my passion and heart is for us to build those bridges with our staff and all the stuff that they know we're there. They need to. They reach out, they get an answer, we go back and forth, and we build this. Because we have a lot of growing to do. We know this. We're a new board in the sense of members and everything, and we want to have what each board and administration, and for that matter, to the city and our principal, that relationship that they never had before. We want to build that way. We want to build those.
We have Dr. Avery's meeting with the principals as well, Fridays, in his individual groups that he's meeting with. He did focus groups as well.
He's
Yeah.
been meeting with us too.
Mr. Woodson, do you have any final questions before we?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Well, I thank you all very much for your patience and this, I apologize. We had a full agenda. We didn't realize the added item was gonna add so much time, so we spent more time tonight than I would like to have, because I'm trying to get us out at reasonable hour,
I said in the beginning.
starting earlier. You said what time?
So the meeting go fast. You know things happen, kind of.
I'm not,
Yeah.
but I do appreciate you all being here and spending the time and engaging in the discussions. So thank you for that, and Sam and.
Thank you,
Thank
Sam.
you.
Sam.
I'll take a motion to adjourn. Any other? Well, I need to ask, is there anything else? Okay, so then I'll take the. motion. Second that, all in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Let's go. Dr. Sack, yeah.
Sir,
Allergies, explaining to my daughter. Explaining to my grand.